You'd think after doing this so many times that I would like remember how to do live streaming, but I feel like every time I do it, I have to like Google like, do I put the stream key in YouTube or do I put it in OBS or what do I do? And I don't know. It's silly. But thank you for joining us for another little talk. I'm gonna be calling the guest in just a moment. Just a moment. All right, all right. God, where is he? Here we go. Let's hope this works. If Discord is gonna be a bitch. Hello. Hang on one sec. One sec.
No,
Hello.
it's okay. Take your time.
Okay, I think we can hear you. Can you speak?
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, perfect. I think we are roughly equal levels, so I think
All right.
that should be good. If anyone in chat, if you guys can let me know if one of us is too loud, too not loud. What's the quiet? Jesus Christ.
No,
But
it's okay.
otherwise,
Frankly, I tried to get the headphones to work on my laptop, but Discord was not being friendly to me.
Discord, it always happens. That for some reason, I always use. So I use like this microphone I'm using now, which is like an XLR mic. It's the one I use to record my videos, and I every time I'm on Discord chat, I always use it. But every time I log into Discord, they're like, "Hey, I assumed that you didn't want to use that mic that you've used every time. I assumed that you wanted to use the one like that's on your little shitty like $10 webcam." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, I
cool.
mean,
That's great."
XLR is a good choice. XLR is a very good choice. I thought about getting that one whenever I wanted to try making a YouTube career, but life got a way of me ever pursuing that idea.
Yeah, it happens. I found it's more about the post anyway. Like I've found that like I have like a little what's it called? A Yeti snowball. It's like $50 that I used when I first started making videos. And I found and it sounds like shit when you record like dry, but it's like if you record it in a closet and then like no apply some filters to it and shit, it ends up sounding almost basically the same. I just use this now because I can and it's I don't want to record in a closet anymore because I would have to turn off my AC because it was too loud, and it was just I would come out like 10 pounds lighter from just all the sweat.
That's a fun image. I would like the idea of me just like recording in a closet in the fetal position. Sounds like a blast.
It works, but are you by any chance able to bump up your volume a little bit?
Hold on, let's see. Like this.
Yeah, just a little bit more, maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't mean to hit that. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's as far as it goes. Sorry, Chief.
No worries if you can, if by any chance if you can like hold it close to your mouth or anything. But I think we're generally the same. I think people can hear us both, so if I'm a
Yeah.
little bit too
Well,
loud, guys, in chat, let me know. I can turn mine. Maybe I'll turn mine down a little bit, and then I'll just hopefully it won't be too low when it gets uploaded. But oh yes, so if you would like to introduce yourself by whatever name you would like to go by on here, go right for it.
all right. You can just call me Drew. Drew's good.
Drew, perfect. Okay, yeah. So we had a little back and forth on the comments of one of my reject masculinity videos, and then I invited you on, and we exchanged some emails. So, I have to look at the email again, but I asked you, what was like your main contention, and yours you mentioned was it incuriosity about the reaction to
Uh,
the video?
your incurious behavior towards people's response to your video was the topic I wanted to touch upon.
Okay, yeah, sure. Did you want to sort of like start off by like sort of like elaborating on that, and then we can go from there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I have to apologize. Due to me being a very busy guy, I'm not going to be here for a particularly long time.
That's
So
fine.
what I did, so what I did was I set up a small list of three questions, just three, and the gist of it is what the goal will be at the end of it is if you can defunct any argument in between these three questions, however they may be, Yeah, I will concede, I will submit, and I will apologize for anything that I may have called you previously. That would have been just a major assumption, and we can end this call on good terms.
Sounds cool.
And let me think. When I got this, okay. So yeah, after that we should be done in about 15 minutes tops.
Sounds cool.
Okay. So the first question I want to get into is on YouTube. Part of our discussion, I think we had two different chains or two different comment chains,
Mm.
and in one of them, I posted, I usually don't enjoy your videos, but you just straight up didn't get the joke. And your poor rebuttals to people making legitimate criticism to your argument where you've devolved into name calling is straight up sad. Not that I blame you. You get comfortable enough being regarded as a voice of reason on YouTube. You will likely eventually embody that perception and treat everybody's word as, or treat every word as gold plucked from the roots of wisdom. Sadly, you're not a tree of knowledge. You're a human being. And you responded, so you consider these videos jokes? There are plenty of people in these comments straight up saying that they are homophobic and transphobic. It seems like you are not willing to look at the situation objectively. And what name calling? Plenty of people have called me names, but I have simply pointed out that they clearly didn't watch the video before commenting, which many negative comments admit, and that they don't really have solid points as they are based mainly on emotion and fifis. So I got curious about specifically the part where you said, what name calling? Plenty of people have called me names. So what I did was I went ahead and I did my research through the comment section. In one particular comment, you referenced the top comments specifically in another one of our discussions, so I decided to start there. I found this one conversation with a person named Lamau, and this person said, these videos are a great part of why I started working out. 3 months later, I'm in better shape and I eat better, I sleep better, I live better. It's not about making fun of people, it's about showing there are two ways you can go and you make the choice where you want to go. I'm 21 now and have been depressed for almost all of my teenage years for being weak, weird, skinny, and now being able to sculpt my body and control what I do has given me huge relief. Embrace masculinity, reject weakness. It's a shame to grow old and never see the beauty your body's capable of. To which you responded, this really isn't the point. Feel free to encourage others as I state in the vid, but accompanying that with mocking and putting down other men for their choice of clothing or sexuality seems really weak and non-masculine. What is the issue with people being LGBT or a dude who likes to wear a dress? Stop the catastrophizing. Apologies. How's that you pronounce it? Catastrophizing.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And in any case, this is not the way quote, this is not the way I would rather be seen, as toxic rather than as a harmless fool who will get stomped on in the real world as soon as they leave their echo chamber, end quote. Why are you setting up this childish dichotomy? Just do you and don't bother people who are different and aren't harming you. This is frankly pathetic and unmanly. He responds, well, we have to agree to disagree. And also, for future reference, calling long-term subscriber names like unmanly and pathetic just sends a bad example to you as a content creator slash influencer if you are unable to debate on a topic that you made a whole video on without insulting me in the first 5 words and calling me ignorant for not conforming to your ideology. Then maybe you aren't the expert that should be commenting on this topic in the first place. And also, FYI, using LGBTQ as a talking point just shows how much you are willing to exploit a movement just to shield yourself from any criticism. You have yourself a great day, -1 subscriber. You respond, I personally wouldn't want a person such as yourself in the community anyway. If you honestly believe putting other men down is a sign of healthy masculinity, I really don't know how you even interact with someone such as yourself, as that seems like such an elementary facet of common sense. Facet, my apologies, of common sense. Also, I didn't insult you. I said the behavior was non-manly. Seems like you just took it as a snowflake. So I guess my first question would be, how is this not name calling?
Which one? The snowflake?
Well, the majority. You called him a snowflake. You referred to him as unmanly and pathetic, and several other things I would consider an insult.
The unmanly and pathetic being the videos themselves. or the behavior in the videos?
No, it seemed pretty clear that you were referring to him specifically.
Because he was defending the videos.
Sorry, repeat that.
Because he was defending the videos.
Yes, he was defending the videos.
Yeah.
So you admit that it was name calling.
I mean, usually when I think of name calling, I'm just like, hey, loser, hey, you're an idiot, you're a dumbass. But if I say like, hey, this behavior that you're engaging in seems unmanly or pathetic because you're putting other people down to make yourself feel bigger. I mean, if you want to call that name calling, I mean, sure. But like when I'm thinking of name calling, I usually think of like my rebuttal was a lot of the comments that I received were like, oh, you're just a beta. Oh, you just have low T. Oh, you're just an SJW cuck or something. Like that's kind of what I usually think of when I think of name calling.
Well, that's the thing, though. Another thing you referred him to as a snowflake, I thought that would fit more into that category as well, by your definition of what an insult is.
Oh, absolutely. But I think he demonstrated very snowflake behavior.
To what end? To what regard?
Can you go back and read his? It was the message right after my second one.
Okay. We have to agree to disagree, and also for future reference, calling a long-term subscriber names like unmanly and pathetic just sends a bad example to you as a content creator / influencer. If you are unable to debate on a topic that you made a whole video on without insulting me in the first 5 words and calling me ignorant.
Oh wait, sorry. Can you read that comment? My comment before that one that he was responding to. My apologies.
Oh, so the first comment?
I think so.
Okay, these videos are a great part of why I started working out 3 months.
Oh no, my comment. My apologies.
Oh, well, your comment. Okay. So,
sorry. Whatever comment he responded to with the message of like, I am unsubscribing.
Oh, that was the one. I was already talking about.
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
No, you're good. If you are unable to debate on a topic that you made a whole video on without insulting me in the first 5 words and calling me ignorant for not conforming to your ideology, then maybe you aren't the expert that should be commenting on this topic in the first place. And also, FYI, using LGBTQ as a talking point just shows how much you are willing to exploit a movement just to shield yourself from any criticism. You have yourself a good day, -1 subscriber.
So in that case, what did he mean exploit LGBT to
I think honestly, I think that point was a bit hyperbolic, but I think what he's trying to get at is you're using this movement of people, this group of people that you yourself are not a part of, as a way to enforce a point that he sees as over exaggerated.
Well, technically, I am a part of it, like a little bit, but regardless, so what does that mean? Does that mean I can't ever speak on behalf of anyone to a group I don't belong to? Like if someone's being like really racist to someone online, I can't say like, hey man, that's kind of cringe.
No, that's not really his point. All he's saying is that the way that you're behaving towards people within the comments section is very negative and rather ugly, albeit in a very subdued sort of gaslighting sense.
So what would be an example of that?
Well, for example, there was a comment you told me where you told me that I was getting emotional over a point, which was just a simple comment regarding like, hey, this behavior you're kind of doing is sort of inappropriate. It's not a proper way to treat your fans. And But
you'd have to hang on. You'd have to read. Do you have your comment that I responded to?
Oh, I could. I just have to dig it up real quick because one of them I have right here on my app. And the other one I can go ahead and dig for. It'll take a minute.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. But
okay.
So like just to like for in this case, when I was talking about like being emotional, like not just to you but to others, what I end up seeing, and I see this often with a lot of men, or especially men who like would either comment on the video or men who were sort of, against a lot of sort of what's what I'm looking for, like SJW feminism, stuff like that, is that usually when they're talking about masculinity or, what it means to be a man, their justifications for certain things, particularly like this trend of videos, is very emotional. So, for example, in this case, so if you watched my video, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. So my general point was, and as I say at the end of the video, was like, hey, I'm all for promoting healthy habits, for lifting, for being healthy. That's great. But the fact that these videos tend to be more the fact that these videos seem to also attack certain groups, whether it's the LGBT community, femboys, even fat people. It just seems it seems to take the focus away from the improvement. Because like if you actually go to a lot of these videos, and even like the videos that are like on the comments on my section or on my video, you'll get a lot of guys who are just straight up like, yes, I am homophobic. Yes, I am transphobic. They're like mentally ill people. Yes, femboys are disgusting.
Oh yeah,
What ends up happening is you have like this movement that's supposed to be about positivity, which I'm all for. But when you add that stuff in, you end up attracting a very negative vibe to these videos, and you end up attracting a lot of people who I mean, I can't speak for them, but you end up attracting a lot of people who aren't there for the motivation. They're just there because they just like asserting themselves over others. And I think that's a very unhealthy way to promote masculinity.
But here's the thing, though. The comment that you were responding to that I was using an example, this person did not directly insult you in any specific way. They said that they unsubscribed to you and that they think you're being a poor example in terms of how you carry yourself. But there was no direct insult. He didn't call you a snowflake. He didn't call you pathetic. He didn't call you unmanly. None of those are direct insults.
Yeah, but that was his original comment was completely emotion based. It was completely absent to the entire point of the video. The entire point of the video is saying, hey, motivation is great, but if it has to come at the cost of like putting other men down, I don't really see that just seems like needlessly negative and not healthy. And his response was, well, they helped me. And it's like, okay, that like as I respond to him, it's like that's great, but that isn't the point of the video. It may have helped you, cool, but would like the question I asked a lot of other people who kind of made similar comments was it the femboys part? Was that the part that like, or like the LGBTQ part that kind of that motivated you, or was it the second half of the guys and like like bodybuilders or guys doing sports? And they're like, well, it's the guys doing sports, and it's like, okay, yeah, so it seems like the second half of the videos, those are where the motivation lies. That's the motivation. That's where you're getting the motivation from. That's great. That's awesome. I love that. Show guys doing awesome things. But when you have the second part, and a lot of other guys have even said in the comments saying, it's like, yeah, I don't really agree with the first parts. Or it's like, yeah, that's kind of cringe. And it's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, hey, that's fair enough, but did you have to do it without calling it pathetic and unmanly?
Well, I call his behavior pathetic and unmanly, which it was.
Okay.
Or just defending that sort of behavior as well. That's actually something else that sort of like irks me about a lot of these guys who end up falling into these communities is like whether it's like Andrew Tate or I don't know, any sort of like red pill guy fresh and fit is, and this kind of goes back to sort of like the emotional part, is when you criticize like the negative parts of like whether it's like red pill or the manosphere, they'll respond by saying it's like, yeah, well, they did this, or like they helped me, or I was in a bad place and they helped me out of it. And that, like, okay, that's fine, but that's not what you're critiquing. Like, we're not critiquing like the good things. Like, if someone tells you like, hey, you should get 8 hours of sleep a night, you should work out, you should eat healthy, you should try to make your way in the world, that's all fantastic. But if they start like talking shit about women, about LGBTQ people, saying femboys are disgusting, start talking shit about trans people, and someone calls that out, and then your response is, it's like, well, they also said some good stuff. It's like, well, hang on, that's not where the argument is. That's not what we're critiquing.
But that's the thing, though, is that I feel that the point the person was trying to make was that he didn't believe that the video that you seem to carry it as, you believe that this entire trend itself was toxic, which is what I got from the video, is that you seem to think that the entire trend of what it is a meme, but the idea of embrace masculinity, reject modernity is overall, by definition, by concept, a toxic belief to have. And he was showing that, well, I didn't see anything negative about it. It helped me. And there's a lot of people in the comments that say the same thing.
Yeah, but like if you just go to like the top comments I featured in the videos, like the like again, like I even say at the end of the video, I think I even say, I have to rewatch it, but I think I even state in the video, I'm not saying that all people who enjoyed these videos are like have these toxic beliefs, But when you look at the top videos of this trend, when you look at some of the top comments on these videos, you get a lot of this very negative, very hateful. And I see the same thing in plenty of communities, whether it's like manosphere stuff, red pill stuff. There are some, like, I don't think most of these guys, I don't even know if like most of these guys actually feel this sort of like animosity towards women or gay people or whatever. But when
Which
you have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
my apologies. That'll transition actually into the second question of what I was going to ask. But before I do that, I wanted to point out another discussion real quick. Then we'll go ahead and go to the second question. There was down the chain of the person that you responded to that I brought up earlier. There was a person named Sandwich de Pescado as his username, and he was making fun of you using the term childish dichotomy as a term for another YouTuber you were having a discussion with in the comments. And he specifically said, sounds like an insult to me, which the word also ironically describes you as whole because of your outburst when someone doesn't agree with you. Maybe try stepping into the sun a little, which is, directly intended to hurt your feelings. He responds, you respond, it's ironic that simply getting pushback on your viewpoints causes this much of a meltdown. I am always open to discuss these issues on stream, but it's very ironic that all these masculine men get emotional very quickly as soon as I point out their logic is flawed and doesn't stand up to scrutiny. He responds, you're saying that as if all men are required to be emotionally hardened, as if they're robots with no feelings. You respond, then they shouldn't run their mouths about things that they don't understand. If I am not educated on a subject, I sit back and listen and learn. When I point out that these videos objectively put down other men to craft their own view of masculinity, and they start stomping their feet like toddlers, that is not manly. It's okay to be emotional. It's not okay to be used at that as a excuse for childish and irresponsible behavior. He responds, I'm not going into your stream where other or like-minded degenerates lurk in. You easily have an advantage in offering to discuss in your stream as a death trap just to house your ego. Previous comment, you also added on that you would like to invite him to your stream. When he says this, you respond, it's literally just me and the person I am speaking to you. If you are too cowardly, that's fine, but at least admit it and stop coping. So I guess that would go back to the first question. How is this not name calling?
Which part's name calling?
Well, you said you called him cowardly and told him to stop coping.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that brings back to what you told me directly, which was what name calling. And more specifically, you said people have been calling me names in the comment section, which, to be blunt, I think that using other people's poor taste in how they touch on a subject as an excuse for you to be poor taste is kind of immature in its own right, because the term using fire with fire is an ironic term. You put two things together, you just made inferno, you just burned more shit. So I think that's not an appropriate approach to that. If anything, I think people should just be allowed to discuss on their own merits. But upon you consistently engaging with people that you disagree with, that you don't see your right in, you just end up making yourself look bad and contradicting different statements. Things that you said here contradict things that you said to me, which just makes you look bad.
What part?
Well, what you said to me was what name calling, as if you were oblivious to name calling. The comments that I brought up here are in the top comment chain. A lot of people have seen this. This was not hard to look for. All I had to do was go into this specific comment chain, and I found you calling people multiple names, insulting them with multiple different terms.
Am I insulting them, or am I insulting them based off their beliefs and character?
Insulting them. Their belief and character would be a part of them, so that would be an insult to them directly.
Well, no. If someone says like, "Hey, you're just too much of a wimp to like debate me or to like argue," and I say, "Yeah, you can come on stream anytime if you want to debate these ideas," and their response is, "It's like, well, I'm not going to do that," and it's like, and I'm like, "Well, that's cowardly."
Well, that's not cowardly. They probably don't have the proper equipment for it.
Well, that's not what they said. They kind of may have the excuse of like, well, you're gonna be there and it's a death trap. I don't know what they're even talking about. Like, you're on here. I've had other discussions with plenty of people on these streams, and they're actually, most of them are pretty civil. I
Not
actually feel like I'm a far more civil with a lot of the people who come on than they are with me. But
probably so, but he probably hasn't watched your streams, and by the way you behave in the comment section, he probably assumes that you're the same way on your streams. I mean,
such
personally, I
as
think.
pointing out people's poor behavior. I mean, so like this is like where like we get to like the sort of like or what's the paradox. Because one of the comments, or one of a lot of the comments I got from a lot of people was saying it's kind of ironic that in the video you point out guys for attacking other people, but then you come in and attack us. And it's like, well, hang on, there's a major difference. If you are, if you're being the initial aggressor, if you're putting this stuff out there and attacking people who aren't doing you any harm, I even say in the video, if you're critiquing people who are saying stuff like, "Hey, uh, men are stupid. Men need to like submit to women." Absolutely, fuck those people because you're attacking their ideas. You're not attacking them personally. But when you make all these videos where it's just like a hey, this guy in a skirt, or like hey, these people at an LGBTQ rally, and then I come in, I'm like, hey, it's kind of cringe. You're just kind of attacking these people or criticizing them or telling people to reject them for real no actual reason or like behavior that you find like that is like actually causing harm to anyone. It's just stuff that you find disgusting or immoral or weird. And I call you out for that, and then you double down saying it's like, well, you're being the toxic one. Like at what point, and then other people will say like at what point can you hold people accountable for these behaviors that doesn't come off as like name calling? Like you're like the example you just gave. If someone's like, hey, you like you're too afraid to engage with these ideas, and I say it's like, well, you're always free to come on stream anytime to discuss these ideas, and then they bitch out, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of cowardly. That's
Well,
I don't really consider that a personal insult. I'm just like, well, I mean, you kind of like stepped up to the plate, and then you didn't didn't pull the trigger.
well, personally, if you told me that right off the bat when I just said like the videos helped me, I would personally take that as an insult.
Well, hang on. Well, I understand. I understand that a lot of guys took them personally as insults, but there is a vast difference between like me personally insulting someone or them demonstrating cowardly behavior and then me saying, "Yeah, it's cowardly," or them. Another perfect example is them saying things that are just straight up like homophobic or transphobic, and I'm like, "Yeah, it seems bigoted," or that seems like ignorant, and they're
But
like,
that's
"Whoa, man! Like, why are you insulting me?" And it's like, well, I'm not insulting you. Like I think maybe that's the disconnect. When I think of name calling, I just mean like unprompted, like you're a beta, you're a cuck, you're a loser. What
well,
I'm talking about is like, hey, if you demonstrate a behavior, if you say like openly homophobic or transphobic things, or you like, it's like you won't debate me, and I'm like, okay, do you want to debate? And they're like, no, and I'm like, oh, that's cowardly. That's kind of a bitch move.
well, that's the thing though. I think I may have not translated this part properly, but Pescado didn't offer to go on stream first and say he wanted to debate with you directly. You actually offered that to begin with, and he said no. Now, whether or not the insult could be a form of cowardice, I think that's really just up to debate. It could be that he just didn't want to. He just wanted to release his comment and debate with you through text because he doesn't want to go through the work. Maybe he has a job of his own, like I do. I mean, to be honest, I bought the headset just yesterday just so I could have this discussion with you because I'm not well equipped. Now I can't use it because Discord is being a bitch, but it is what it is. Some people just aren't well equipped to have a debate, or potentially they just don't trust that you will give them a proper debate because what they see in the comments is a reflection of what they're to expect with you, and they don't want to be involved in what they perceive as a unpleasant conversation.
Well, I agree. I completely agree with that second part, but that's because I point out that a lot of their arguments don't hold water.
Well, okay.
I mean, that's sort of the issue that I was having. Is like if you actually like look through the comments and see people's reactions to the video, they're like I did say this to a lot of guys. Like it seems like your arguments are being really emotional, or you're kind of being a snowflake. And part of the reason was is because a lot of the arguments were just completely absent to whatever the video was saying. Like I got a lot of comments saying it's like, well, you obviously are a feminist who hates men, or like you're obviously against people who work out, and I'm like, what? Like like you're kind of either you didn't watch the video, which a lot of people admitted they didn't before they downvoted it, or you're watching the video with such like with like your fist balled, like you're so like got so much anger and frustration that you're not able to like actually listen to what is being said. I mean, so from my video, did you find anything objectionable in my video that I said?
I'm coming at your video with complete neutral eyes.
Like for you personally.
Me personally, I casually dismiss it.
Okay, but did you disagree with anything I said, or did you find anything I said objectionable or out of pocket?
Not really. Most of it was just very subjective in my eyes. I could see how that would be an issue for people. I could see how some people would be offended by it. But if I really wanted to break down what the issue with the video itself was, we'll have to go into my next two questions, which I would like to transition to. But please continue your point.
Oh no, I was wondering what you found objectionable, but yeah. Now we can go to the second question.
Okay. So the second thing you brought up is you mentioned that a lot of people, including now, you mentioned that a lot of people in your comments, or more people, a lot of people that watch your videos, you believe are homophobic or transphobic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also got curious about that. So I decided to do a little bit of research, and I looked at 300 top comments and 300 new comments to see what exactly was pumping in, adding up to about 600 in total. Probably went through a couple of numbers more. I was calculating them as I was going along, writing them down. At some point, it became very repetitious because I was realizing how hyperbolic that statement is. Now, what I did find quite a few handful of people who did not approve of homosexuality. Specifically, they disagreed with the lifestyle. Now,
Well, hang on, real quick.
Hmm.
Do you think if I say, "Hey, I don't agree with the gay lifestyle," do you consider that person homophobic?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, then we just completely fun. Okay, because okay, so
Look, I didn't want to look. I didn't want to go ahead and throw this out here, but I'm actually bisexual.
That just means absolutely nothing to me. So
It does.
Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No, it does. Let me explain.
Wait, hang on, real quick. Real quick. So just to confirm, just because I kind of had a feeling we were gonna sort of like, you know, fall into that when the term like, or here's a better way to do it. When you say, what do you mean when you say, or when you think that they say gay lifestyle?
When they mean homosexual lifestyle, people who support the LGBTQ community, or particularly persist in being intimate with a man. That's all I think about.
So I think this is where we're going to run into some trouble. And if we're going to, that's fine. If I say, hey, I'm not homophobic, I just disagree with, or I find it, what's the word I'm looking for? Not offensive or appalling, or I find it objectionable that a man would have sexual relations with another man. Is that statement to you not seem hypocritical, or what's the word I'm looking for?
No, I wouldn't consider that at all.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I think that's sort of like where we're disconnecting. If someone says, "Hey,
Well,
I think that
right?
being gay is disgusting, or I think it's objectionable, or I think it's morally reprehensible," I would consider that person homophobic.
Oh, all right. Well, person who is part of the LGBT community, I don't consider it that.
Okay, yeah. So then
And
I think
I have a reason for it. I have reasons for saying that. The reason why is because there's a reason it's called the LGBT community. It's a community exclusive to people who understand each other. We understand one another a lot more than what is considered average people in American society. There's a lot of people who just don't get our ways, whether it comes from how they raised, how they are. Now, homophobic, that's a big term. People throw that out a lot, but the term phobic means irrational, emotional. It's a very instinctive emotional reaction to it. When I think homophobic, I think of certain people that were in my family, when how they responded to homosexuals. They were very violent in their verbal opinions towards homosexuals or trans people. Now, when I think of a person who just casually disagrees with the lifestyle, That's just a person who doesn't feel comfortable around it,
But
and that's fine. That's
but hang
fine.
on. So real quick though, just a thing. What do you mean? So by lifestyle, you just mean a man who is living as a gay man.
Yes,
Okay, so basically what you're saying is they're not so they're uncomfortable with just gay people existing basically.
they're just uncomfortable being around people who exist in homosexual activity. Yeah, sure.
So like well I mean on one hand if I like was like walking down the street and I saw like two guys like blowing each other on the sidewalk and I'm trying to get to work, I'm like what the fuck? Like I understand that, like that would be annoying. But like what I'm talking about is like let's say I work at a bar. Let's say I'm like at the bars having a drink on my day off. A guy next to me, we get talking. The dude casually mentioned it's like, oh yeah, me and my boyfriend are going on a trip next weekend. So this guy's gay. If I were to have like this sort of like, if I were to kind of go, ugh, and then kind of like scoot a seat over because I didn't want to talk to him anymore because he was gay, you wouldn't consider me that me being homophobic in that sense.
Well, no, that's a physical reaction, though. That's a physical reaction. That would be considered homophobic. Be saying I casually don't agree with the lifestyle of being homosexual. That's not homophobic.
But
That's
what
just
does,
I
but
don't
when
agree
you
with it.
say the light, like, this, sorry, when I think of lifestyle, I think of like general, like, so for example, I don't know, I'm trying to think. I think of like major facets of a person's life and how they interact with others and what they do on a day to day basis and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when you say a gay lifestyle, like I could, like, here's a perfect example. I could say that, like, hey, I'm not for the partying lifestyle. Like, if someone just goes out every single night and gets like fucking rails lines of coke and like drinks a shit ton and like fucks tons of strangers, like yeah, that I wouldn't be for that. I think that's not good. I think that's unhealthy. I wouldn't recommend people do that. Every once in a while, go for it. Have a one night stand, sure. I don't know about coke, probably not. But like yeah, get drunk every once in a while. But if it's like a hardcore like clubbing, partying lifestyle that you're doing every night, yeah, because those things objective. But here's like where we come to it. The reason that I object to that is because it objectively will cause people harm. It can that will lead to bad outcomes. Doing coke, drinking it in excess, having unprotected sex with tons of strangers. When you say the gay lifestyle, you're just talking about someone being gay or engaging in consensual relationships with other gay people. So so if I'm uncomfortable with that, so you're kind of separating an emotional and an objective view of that. But the question I would have is if I'm against something, if I'm against a certain lifestyle, there has to be an objective reason, right? There would have to be something I could point to. It's like, hey, I am not for this because it causes harm. I'm not for this because it's bad for the people who engage in it. Do
Mm.
you so because otherwise then it's just emotional. Because if someone asks me like, why don't you like the partying lifestyle? And I'm like, well, I just don't like it. Well, if I can't point to any objective reason why I would be against it, then it's just all emotional, right?
Well, but how do you know the people in the comments don't have their own reasons for it? They just say they casually disagree with it.
Well,
I mean, they
yeah,
don't have
but
to like pull out any trauma to give their reason. They can just say, "Oh, I disagree with the lifestyle." That's fine.
but what possible reason? So here, let me set up an example. Maybe we can go through here. Let's say a person comes to me and says like, yeah, I am against the gay lifestyle. I am not for the gays. I'm not for the LGBTQ community. I am against all of that. And I ask them, okay, well, why is that? What could what is an answer they could give me that would to you not qualify as a sort of as a homophobic response?
Well, for one, I heard I do have a friend. He says that the reason that he doesn't really approve of it is because of parenting. That's why he doesn't like it. Now, I'm kind of mixed on his preference on it. I understand where he's coming from. He believes that a child who will grow up with homosexual parents will be more likely to be neglected in a society that is against homosexual couples. And the thing is that that is a trend that I've noticed with not just friends and family, but through the news, the media. I have seen that happen a lot, where homosexual couples who do have a kid, that kid tends to be more neglected. No, I don't agree with that
Wait, what do
100%.
you what do you mean neglected by who?
Neglected by usually when they get into school and they find out they have homosexual parents, they tend to be the target of bullying. And not only that, but they grow with very psychologically confusing aspects of having to face this reality early on. Now, whether or not the kid could end up being damaged or anything is completely up to the parents themselves, of course. But they will be raised up in an environment that will there will be someone who will be against them to a degree. Is the logic that he presented to me. He's
So
much better. He's much more articulate than I am.
yeah, he sounds
But
like a dumbass in my opinion. But like, I just really want to touch upon this real quick. So let's lay that out. Okay, so I understand what you're talking about. You're talking about if a kid grows up with two dads and he goes to school and the kids at school are like, ha ha ha, Chris has got two dads. He's going to feel outcast. Maybe he watches television and movies and he sees like a mother and a father and he's like, oh, I don't have that. Where's my mother? And like, yeah, I absolutely can see how that can lead to issues for the child. What is the solution for that?
the solution would just be societal change, really.
Exactly. So why would yeah yeah? Wait, hang on. Sorry, you kind of caught me off guard because you kind of made the point for me.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
societal change is the only way to do it. But the thing is, societal change is very slow. It's a very slow process,
yeah. But so
and
what?
God knows when that'll come to a conclusion.
Yeah. So but what is the argument then? It's like we shouldn't let loving gay couples adopt children in need because people might bully the kid.
No, I don't think that was the point he was trying to get across. What I think he was trying to say is that he doesn't approve of gay coupling in the sense that if they were to have a child, they would become larger targets and as a result become more traumatized.
Yeah. So he's saying that, but the problem is that that's a perfect example of sort of like a massive logical fallacy. He may not think it's emotional, but it's a massive logic fallacy because he is putting. I mean, you could. Let me just. I'm gonna. I, I
It's
don't
fair.
want
To be honest, like I understand the point you're getting across, and that's fine. It's just an example of a person of why they believe it, and regardless if it's a logical fallacy or not. Me personally, I don't believe it 100%, but it's a reason. It's
but
a
it's a
reason
lot.
that it's within a realm of logic that he believes in that it could be considered subjective. So I
Well,
accept it as
no.
it is.
Well, no, because you're. And with that same train of logic, you could say it's like, hey, could you make the argument with that train of logic that black people shouldn't reproduce?
No, because that's a race, not a
Yeah,
sexual orientation.
absolutely. But if they give birth to a black child, that kid is gonna have a higher chance of being the target of racist attacks. No.
Well, it sort of depends on the state that you grow up in. Over here, we have a ton of black kids, so really, white people are more likely to get bullied up here.
Okay, so in that same logic, do you think white people shouldn't reproduce?
So, what's your argument there that we shouldn't have anybody reproduce just because of that logic?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what his logic is, right?
Okay, that's fine.
I mean,
It's
that's
not
sort
something,
of like the
like I
issue. It's
said, it's
like
not
it's
something that I believe in. It's
I,
something
I
that
know, I
he
know, I know,
feels
I know you
profound.
don't want. I know you're not owning the position, but like the point I'm making is that you're putting forth like, well, this is a reason why someone might not be for the gay lifestyle or gay coupling or gay people having kids, and I mean it's basically it's 100% like victim blaming in a way. Like you're putting you're saying that gay people shouldn't be able to raise children or be there for like an adopted child or a foster child because actually he's here's actually a better question. So the vast majority of gay couples who raise kids, they either adopt the child or they get them from the foster system. There are currently in the US 400,000 children in the foster system. Statistically, objectively, children being raised within that system do very 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 bad. It's not necessarily on the fault of the state. Like obviously I'm sure there are a lot of incompetent workers and foster parents who abuse these children, but it's simply a matter of there's so many children and so few resources that giving them all the attention they need as a growing child is very, very, very difficult. And unfortunately, that leads to a lot of children who grew up in this system, maybe being higher chance of having behavioral issues, maybe committing crimes as they get older. Very unfortunate.
Actually, I would like to add on to that point, because you make a good point actually.
Yeah, so real quick,
Eric,
let me just finish this.
mm,
So if his argument is that, well, gay parents shouldn't be able to or adopt kids or adopt foster kids because it might lead to that kid getting bullied. Now his argument is based sort of like on he's kind of stupid, but he kind of thinks it's like, well, this is objective, right? Like it's good if the gay couple doesn't have the kid because then the kid has a lesser chance of getting bullied. Of course, the kid can get bullied for numerous other reasons. If he has red hair, if he has freckles, if he's short, but regardless, if that is the argument, and if he's going from a logical point of view, doesn't his argument fall apart because if that kid isn't adopted by the gay parents and they grow up in the foster system and they never get adopted by anyone else, that they have a much higher chance of ending up in a poor position come adulthood?
oh sorry, can you repeat the last couple words there? My fiance's talking to me.
So even if I were to grant that, like, yeah, if a gay couple adopts a kid from, say, like the foster system, that kid might have a slightly higher chance of being bullied for that fact. Again, despite the fact that that kid might be bullied for numerous other reasons, for having red hair, for having different colored eyes, for having freckles, regardless. Objectively, we've actually done studies. We've actually followed up with children who have been, like, raised by gay parents in foster, like whether they were adopted or in vitro or surrogate or whatever. On average, the kids actually do better than children in straight families. Now, there's a huge caveat with that. It being that a lot of gay couples who have the means to adopt a child or, have a surrogate are probably already way better well off. They probably have a lot of money in order to do that. So it's not exactly the most fair comparison. However, regardless of all of that, statistically, we know that children who grow up in the foster care system or, were raised by the state with like no one around, they're really looking out for them, unfortunately. Not as much as they can, but unfortunately, resources are limited. Even if I were to grant that, like, your friend is coming at it from a logical standpoint of it's like, well, have this kid being adopted by gay parents might cause the kid harm due to bullying. Objectively, wouldn't the kid have a far greater chance of ending off worse if he was not adopted by the gay couple?
No, I would agree with that, but there's another bit of logic that he used in regards to when it came to being raised by homosexuals. He was looking at it as a person from his own experience, being that he's a 48-year-old man, and he's seen a lot more than I have. And he says that when he was growing up, you can be taught a lot of things. He was taught how to paint a fence. He was taught how to mow a lawn. He was taught things that he could be done in a repetitious cycle. But the two things that he was never taught in life, that he regrets never being told, is the two most important roles in his life: how to be a good partner, how to be a good significant other, and how to raise a child. And he went through multiple divorces because he didn't know how to handle that. And he says that if his life as a straight man is so difficult without being able to handle that, and him knowing people who also go through that similar process he does, where they weren't taught how to do better, he believes that a homosexual couple would have a significant larger problem with how much societal woes are against them.
Yeah, okay, but that doesn't that's not so like the argument would be like, hey, we have to change society. If people are bullying gay kids, we call that out. If people are harassing gay people, we call it out. We make it stop. We don't
Okay.
just say, hey, gay people. I have the logical argument to say, hey, gay people can't raise kids because other people might bully them. Again, that train of logic could lead us to very, very, very bad places.
Well, hey, that's why he's just some schmuck and not a political leader.
Well,
But
exactly. So in this
but the thing
case,
is,
it's like, but
this is
regardless, the issue there is that when we're talking about like emotional arguments, his entire argument is based off of his argument is not objective. It might be based off his objective based on his personal experiences, but when we're talking like objectivity, we're talking about like statistics. We're talking about facts across a wide spectrum of data. Not just, well, I knew a gay couple, and they were abusive to their kids, so I'm not for. Like, here's a perfect example. Would you agree that if someone said, it's like, hey, I'm against gay parents adopting kids because I knew a gay couple once and they abused the child, Do you think that is a logically sound argument?
No, because it's a single occurrence.
Exactly. So in this case, this person's argument, they might think it's logical, but in their warped head, but it is when it is refuted by actual statistical evidence, it stops becoming a logic. It's no longer a logical argument.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that most people don't bother to look into facts, especially
Yeah,
not in
because
America.
they're yeah
A lot of
because
them are
they're
very emotional.
yeah, but okay. So like here's for an example. Let's say a child is raised in an environment where their parents are just they're they're raised in an environment where the uh in their general vicinity, black people commit the majority of the crime just due to the demographics. And they go to school and they see the kids who are acting rowdiest in class, and their parents sort of would solidify that. It's like, yeah, this is how like black people are. They're not as smart as white people, et cetera, et cetera. If that child grew up to sort of parrot those views, would you say that that person is racist?
Look, I want to, as much as I do want to pursue this type of topic, that this we're getting way off track to what my
Just
original.
a, but I know it is completely on track. Would you think that person is racist?
We're getting way off track.
We're okay. We're not
No,
off
no,
track.
no,
I
no.
here
We're on
here.
track. I'm being
If you
totally
just
getting
answer this
question
one
anyways.
question, I promise I will wrap it right back around. Would you think that that person is racist if they are
Yeah.
parroting that same information?
No, sure, I would say that.
Okay, so when someone says it's like, well, I'm against the gay lifestyle, and they give, even if the reason they give in their own head they think is logically sound, it can still be homophobic. No.
Yeah, that would just depend on you.
What do you mean you?
It depends on how you view it. If you take offense to it, then yes, I guess that would make it homophobic. If you don't take offense to it, then it is.
Well, no. Because whether someone finds something offensive isn't that's their own personal subjective. But if we're talking about like, hey, these views towards gay people actually statistically objectively cause a lot of gay people harm. Ironically, it is those sort of attitudes that perpetuate things like gay kids being bullied, or if a gay parents adopt kids, they get shit for it by other parents in the community. So these are things that actually cause objective harm in the community. So
Mac,
you
did you
can,
say we were
so
going to
someone
bring
can,
it back to my previous question?
yeah, but so just to finish up, so someone can say, oh, well, I don't find that offensive. But if you show them, it's like, hey, these attitudes and these views actually cause demonstrable objective harm to this group. And the person's still like, well, I mean, I don't care. Yeah, that person's homophobic in my eyes.
Okay, that's fair. That's in your eyes. Now, can we go back to I haven't even asked the question yet. What the
Oh,
second
yeah,
question?
sorry, go for it.
That's okay. It's okay. I was in part of us derailing over there, so that was partially my fault.
No
But
worries.
going back to where we were, the point is that I went over and checked the comments. People that I would say are arguably homophobic. People say they disagree with the homosexual lifestyle. That added up to about 13 out of the 600 comments I checked.
Mm-hmm.
People who said they were directly homophobic said that I don't like homosexuals. I don't think they deserve to live. I hate them. I hate their guts. I found 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, my question is, what is your evidence or proof of any kind that you think people either don't watch your videos, just didn't watch the video the whole way, or are homophobic slash transphobic?
Well, for the people who didn't watch the video all the way, is a large group of them are either they just said things I didn't say at all. So like they said things like, "Hey, you don't like people improving themselves, or you're against people working out." Which is, I was like, well, not at no point in the video did I say that. I actually refute the exact opposite. There were other comments that would say something along the lines of, hey, it's just because people like these videos doesn't mean that they're all homophobic or transphobic, which is something I also say in the video. So maybe they did watch the. So maybe I have to amend myself. Maybe they did watch the video, but they seem to not be watching it objectively because they took messages away from the video that were not present in the video whatsoever, or couldn't even be reasonably derived. Like, I don't know how you could watch that video and think that I hate men or something like that, or I hate masculinity.
I think that should come down to. I think that should really tell you something about the quality of your video. about whether or not you got your ideals across in a correct way. Because ignoring the overwhelming amount of comments that are directed towards what you consider like miscommunication of what you were trying to deliver across, or things that are just straight up biased to an absurd degree. If you look at your dislike rate and you see how much it's overwhelming to the like ratio, should that not be enough of an indication that maybe I didn't approach this video the proper way? Maybe I didn't get my ideals across right. Maybe there's something I'm doing wrong.
Absolutely not. And in fact, the comments, I actually, a lot of people mention it's like, oh, it's kind of frustrating that a lot of people, reacted so negatively to this. And I actually thought, I told them, I'm like, I actually think it sort of proved the video's point. The entire video's point was that, like, hey, the motivation is fine. But if you're going to tack onto it this sort of like negativity, or this sort of like gatekeeping, or this sort of criticism, asserting yourself over other men to make yourself feel big, it's going to lead to this sort of like toxic environment. And then when all the comments came out saying either just like they were harping on the same quotes, or they were just straight up homophobic or transphobic, or they were saying things that I didn't say in the video, I was like, oh, okay. It seems like the video it seems like you're proving the video's point well. Because if someone actually pointed to something I said objectionable in the video, then we could, okay, that's why I asked you. That's why I asked, like, hey, was anything I said in the video objectionable to you?
No, I looked at the video with completely neutral eyes.
Okay, yeah, so that's my problem. So if I said in the video, hey, if I said in the video it's like men are trash, men fucking suck, and people in the comments were like, hey, I don't like this video because you said men suck. Well, okay, and then I kind of am like, well, maybe I didn't. That's not what I meant. I have to change my messaging. But if I say in the video something like, hey, working out is cool, I just don't like the negativity, and then someone responds with, it's like, oh, so you're saying you hate guys who work out. At some point, because I understand what you're saying, but at some point there has to be a reasonable judgment of that. That's why I was asking you. If there was something I missed in the video that came across as objectionable, or maybe I said something, but maybe people took it the wrong way based on my actual language, then absolutely I will 100% listen to that. But there was none of that in the comments. And no one even mentioned hardly anyone even mentioned any actual thing I mentioned in the video. And that's kind of what communicated to me, okay, because I've actually had videos like that before, where I'll say something meaning one thing, and then I'll see people in the comments say it's like, hey, it seemed like you were doing this when you said this. And I'll look at it and I'm like, oh shit, you're right. I can't actually see how that could be misinterpreted like that because of the way I spoke or the words I put. But in this case, I didn't see any of that. Did you find any of those sort of comments when you were doing your research?
No.
Yeah, so that's sort of like my gauge. If I make a video saying, I don't know, white supremacy sucks, and then all the comments are like, these people hate white people, yada yada yada. You can say it's like, well, I mean, maybe the guy who made the video just didn't send the message right. Well, that's sort of silly, because it's getting to the point where it's like we have to have some sort of objective framework we're working in, or otherwise, because if everything is 100% subjective, then we can't really judge anything, or we can't actually communicate what is actually trying to be communicated. So again, that's why I asked you, did you find anything I said in the video to be objectionable, or that could be viewed as hostile to men or masculinity in general?
No.
Okay, so yeah, so at that
Right.
point, and again, if I saw comments that were like, hey, it seemed like this comment you made was like, if I said something like, all men are trash, or like women rule the world, or like, kill all men, or stuff like that, absolutely. I despise that shit. And I hate when people try to like make excuses for it. It's like, well, it's not what I meant. It's like, yeah, but if I say kill all men, a person may not know that I'm being quote unquote sarcastic, and that can send a bad message. So I absolutely understand that. But the fact that no one in the comments actually pointed out anything I said in the video, and were just either making up shit in their heads, or just recycling quotes, or just kind of lashing out in this very emotional manner, I was like, okay, yeah, it seems like, unfortunately, a lot of these guys who were like, embrace masculinity and stoicism, are reacting like emotional children. So unfortunately, I actually think the problem was worse than I thought. I was kind of coming at from the angle of, hey, maybe this community can be salvaged, but now I don't know. Shit, seems like it's been overrun pretty badly.
So your argument is that nobody pointed out specific quotes within the video, therefore it implies that they didn't watch your video.
Or that they were watching it through a non-objective lens, yes.
Well, may I just say that the video is 10 minutes long? Why would they have
Yeah.
to why would they have to point out specific quotes in a video that's not only one of the shortest ones you made on your track list, but is also hammering the same point over and over? There's no specific quote that would have to be made. The whole video is one single point.
Then what are they disagreeing with? Or what are they finding offense to?
They're finding it offensive of your behavior.
Of saying that, hey, motivation and working out is awesome, self-improvement is great, but like you shouldn't have to shit on femboys and LGBTQ people to do so.
No, you're calling people in your comment section snowflakes.
Well, yeah, he deserved that after our exchange, but the people who made these comments
deserved that. Okay.
Well, yeah, we went over it. He was displaying snowflake behavior. I just didn't call him a snowflake. I was like, well, it seemed like I put forth an argument, and then you got very upset saying it's like I'm unsubscribing. And it's like I pointed out that your behavior was
insult you in any regard. The only thing that could have been perceived as an insult in any subjective facet was that he disagreed with you and he didn't want to be a fan of you anymore. That's it. And
yeah, but if you're pointing out, but again, this is like where we're coming back to the issue. If I point out an issue with a certain behavior or with the trend, and someone reacts in a way of like, I just don't like you because, but they don't actually give it like, well, hang on, what about it didn't you agree with? And I'm like, well, this seems like an emotional reaction. I think that's fair to do.
But you didn't ask him about what he specifically disagreed with. You just told him that he was being childish.
Well, yeah, he was, because he didn't give me anything he actually disagreed with. If I say this video sucks and I don't actually give a reason as to why, it just comes out. It's like, well, if you don't actually say what's wrong with it or what you're actually disagreeing with, if it's just an emotional reaction based off no objective analysis,
Okay.
what sort of reaction would that be? What else would you call that reaction?
What else would I call it? I would call it objective criticism.
Yeah, but subjective criticism can be completely based off emotion. I can watch a certain video while I'm having a bad day and just be like, I don't like this. But that's like, did anything in this video, or maybe I don't like the person who made the video, despite the fact that the person made completely good points. That's why objective analysis is so important, because we all have biases, but we have to take those and put them aside and actually like discuss what is actually being said. When I called him a snowflake, it's like, well, it seems like you are displaying behavior of a snowflake. You're not actually engaging with these arguments in an objective sense. Again, maybe it goes back to sort of like our disagreement on, when I think of like name calling, I just think of someone who's just like, hey, loser, hey, dickhead, like kind of like unprompted. But if someone is putting forth like really, I don't know, like really sort of like toxic ideas or homophobic ideas, and you call that out, it's like, well, it's like, hey, you're being toxic, you're being ignorant. And it's like, whoa, what's with the name calling? It's like, well, I'm not personally insulting you. I'm critiquing your behavior.
Well, Lamau did not call you toxic or ignorant by any means. In fact, I found several comments that didn't refer to you by any name. They just simply disagreed with the video, and your response was to attack them personally.
Well, what are they disagreeing with?
They disagree with the video. That's it.
But what about the video?
They say that the videos helped me out. Therefore, I think maybe it's just a you thing.
But that was the entire point of the video. The entire point of the video was like, look, the motivation is great. I can see how this would help people, but there's no reason this has to be paired with the negative. And a lot of the people who responded actually agreed. They're like, yeah, they did help, but I can't see how a lot of like the negative stuff. Like the question I should have asked him was like, were the femboy sections, or like where was the critiquing of femboys? Was that the part that motivated you? And I actually asked it to a few people, and they were like, well, no, not that part. It's like, okay, so yeah, that's sort of the issue. A good question to ask would be, would these videos be diminished would the motivation be diminished if you got rid of the entire first half, the reject modernity part?
No, the majority of the video's point remains the same.
Exactly. So in this case, you're just adding on needless negativity that attracts people who are just straight up homophobic or just attacking femboys. And I actually think it ends up creating this victim mentality for a lot of men where they think that like society is out to get them and the society is trying to hurt masculinity. But then I asked them for like actual evidence of this and they're like, ugh, and they just kind of femboys, gay people, and it's like, what?
I didn't see a lot of you specifically trying to get that kind of information out of people in the comment section, and very little that would justify you having to call people in your comments cowards for disagreeing with the overall point of your video.
Well, I didn't call him a coward for disagreeing with me. I called him a coward because he wouldn't come on stream to
And it doesn't
argue his
matter.
point.
Doesn't matter. I mean, even with people who would show that sort of behavior, I wouldn't call them a coward if I was in your position because I have influence. You know that much more eyes are on me. A lot of things can be misinterpreted very easily, or things that make sense to me won't be translated as well objectively. You mentioned that we should be looking things more in an objective manner. Well, objectively calling someone a coward is an insult.
Well, I
And
said his
people are going to look at
behavior
that
was
and think you're a
cowardly,
dick.
which I stand by completely.
Well, you stand by and play. Hey, that's fine, but that's an insult by objective facet, and you're
I
acting
really
like
don't
you
think
calling
that's
one.
when we're talking about like an insult or like an ad hominem. If I'm critiquing someone's behavior, I 100% stand by that.
Okay, but let's go ahead and transition to my last question, which is there were some people on here that made interesting points. And you seem to have established the basis that you seem to be want to be challenged in these comment sections. Yes.
Or I would like someone, it's like to anyone who actually disagreed with something in the video, I'd actually like you to cite like what you actually disagree with instead of saying, I disagree. And I'm like, okay, with what? And they're like,
Right.
I just disagree. Because consider like what, like, hey, I think Joe Biden's a bad president. It's like, well, why? It's like, well, I just think it. It's like, well, okay, but like, if you don't actually have any solid point, I mean, funny enough, I actually, as someone who's left leaning, this is what like annoyed me about Trump, was that there were plenty of people who I asked them. It's like, and even people who I agree with, like I didn't like Trump, but there were plenty of people who just didn't like Trump, and then people would ask them like, well, why don't you like Trump? And they're like, I just don't. He's just, yeah. And it's like, that's not good because that creates like this sort of like very sheep mentality of like, I don't actually have to point out any reasons why I don't like something. I just have to say it. But that's, for me, that is like the death of objective analysis. Because you can just say, it's like, well, it's all subjective. It's like, yeah, but if we're not working in any sort of objective framework, then all bets are off, basically. We are living in every individual can live in completely separate realities. And that is not good.
Okay. On to my final question. There was these two comments in particular I found. Saying you brought up that you wanted to be challenged more within the comment section, or at least have people critique specific parts of your video.
Mm-hmm.
I found this comment in particular, which I found very interesting. It's from a person named Osh Waffles. She said, as a fat person, should you bully specific fat people? No. Should you specifically denounce being overweight? Yes, being fat sucks and it will kill me. Don't let anyone think this is okay. Strangely, you did not comment on this video, or this comment, I mean.
Yeah, I agree with that comment. Yeah, I agree with that comment. What?
And for this other one, Bronson.
Wait, just real quick for that one. What was your point there?
Well, the thing is, you say you agree with it, but you also didn't favorite it at all, or anything like that.
Oh, I may have
you
missed
tend to
it.
favorite a lot of comments that you agree with, but this one it seems you've completely ignored.
Well, I probably missed it. I can go back and favorite it now. But yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
You missed it?
Yeah, it's a lot of comments. I missed some.
You responded to me very quickly. You actually still respond to your new comments quite frequently, but you missed this one, which has over 300 likes.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I can go favorite it now. Is it on one of the top comments?
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
No, hang
This
on. What's
other
that? What's that?
one,
What's that? Oh, I'm
this
on a
other one
different
is
account. I'll
called.
do it. I'll do it after. But yeah, I totally agree with that.
All right, and
But that's not.
Bronson.
But real quick. But hang on. That's not. Was that? Did I say anything to the contrary in the video?
Oh, I was about to get to the point of that. What the
Oh
question
yeah, go
is.
go for it. Sorry.
So for Bronson, this person here named Bronson said these types of videos unironically changed my life. I took it as a meme at first, but the more I watched them, the more enamored I was with the idea of recovering lost masculinity. It led me to quit smoking, eat healthy, run daily, and lift 3 times a week. Beforehand, I was a complete loser. The notion of conquering myself was lost to my indulgence in pleasure and laziness. You did respond to this one, saying all of which could have been accomplished without the reject modernity stuff, no? And he
Yeah.
said, sure. But the reason I even bothered commenting was to say it specifically helped me. The videos helped me.
Okay.
And after that, you didn't respond back to it.
Yeah, because we agreed. We were on the same page.
The thing is, I've noticed a lot in your comments is that if it's a comment that you do agree with, you favored it right away. But this one you did not.
Why would I favorite a comment I don't agree with?
I thought you said you agreed with the comment.
I did.
Wait, what?
Oh wait, are you asking why I didn't favorite that comment?
Yes, why didn't you favorite the one that said, sure, but the reason I even bothered commenting was to say specifically that these videos helped me. If it's one that you agreed with, why did you favorite it?
Was the comment edited?
No.
Oh, then I probably just missed that too. I forgot to.
So my whole question on it was, why do you are so persistent in talking to these certain ones that seem to be in a way that you can point out the flaws in their arguments, but these ones that are overwhelmingly positive in their response to these to the embrace masculinity videos, and you don't seem to give them the light of day that much.
Because that person agreed with me.
So just because he said sure, but he still thought overall the videos were a positive thing?
Well, yeah, but yeah, that was the entire point. It's like, yeah, I understand these things can help you. I'm criticizing this one aspect of them. And the person said, it's like, yeah, I totally agree.
What I got from the video and a lot of your comments was not that you were criticizing embrace masculinity as a concept. You were more condemning it as a concept a lot.
Condemning what?
You were condemning the belief that it was specifically about making people who are physically enabled or are homosexual or transsexual, and seeing that it was specifically targeting them as a point of villainy, as making them a target to show that you should be like a strong Unger man, you should not be like these people, and use that as a form to bully them.
Bully who? The gay or trans people?
Gay or trans people, to make them feel bad, is a way to attract people who are already homophobic and transphobic, as shown from the comments that you pointed out towards the end of your video.
Yeah.
But you can casually agree with the person who says that it objectively helped them for the better.
Religion has helped a lot of people. Can I still criticize religion?
Yes, you're allowed to criticize religion.
Yeah.
But you're not criticizing the embrace masculinity. You're straight up condemning it as a bad thing.
Condemning what?
You're condemning the concept of embrace masculinity as a bad concept in terms of how the video is formatted.
Okay, so this is perfect. When we're in the video, where do you get that I'm condemning masculinity?
The whole time you don't say anything good about what the video is presenting.
At the very end of the video, I do a whole spiel of saying I am totally for preaching for people to work out and improve themselves. I just don't like the negative parts. Did you watch the video?
What? No. You said at the end that you support people working out. I'm not talking about that. I understand that you think people should be allowed to embrace working out. But what you disagreed with was the format of the video as the whole. Yeah. You thought that the way that it was structured was a negativity towards trans people, homosexuals, and people who you thought this specific format was bullying, that were targeting and making them look bad.
Correct.
You approve of working out, but you think this is objectively bad.
100%. If all these videos were just the second halves of just like, hey, look at all these awesome dudes who have done awesome stuff, these videos would be epic.
So what does it have to do with your previous point about like you being allowed to criticize religion? This isn't about criticism. This is about you think the format is objectively evil.
Yeah, because if you're framing masculinity as something of like, hey, be like us and don't be like them, you're framing that them as something bad, correct?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So if I show, hey, we're like be like us and don't be like them, and I show people an LGBTQ rally, what message is that sending? What message do you think that might send a guy who's maybe he thinks he's gay watching that video?
Well, if we had a person who specifically sent that to us, the message is obvious with the intent of the person who sent it. But as just a random TikTok video I came across, I wouldn't think any different of it.
But what is that what is the video saying then?
The video is saying, "Don't be weak, be a strong person."
But how are they portraying that message?
They're portraying it by showing people who are content with being incomplete with their lives.
So people at an LGBTQ rally are people who are content with not being happy in their lives?
I didn't see a lot of videos related to it being related just to strictly an LGBTQ rally. Just people who were
well, it's one of the top. It was I show in the video is actually one of the top videos. But let's just say there was one of the videos was like some TikTok kid who was trying on a skirt, and it was like, oh look, I look cute in that skirt. So what is wrong with that kid?
There's nothing wrong with the kid.
Then why are the videos telling me to reject that?
The videos are telling you to reject falling into your succumbing to your personal pleasures and instead trying to embrace and your stronger man.
How is that the kid who's like showing off the skirt? Oh look, I got cute in this skirt. How is he not portraying that? How is he antithetical to what you're talking about? Hello?
I'm trying to think about that.
Okay, maybe you should have done maybe. God. Oh no. Yeah. So basically, the point you're trying to make, at least I understand that's what the videos are trying to say, or like what they claim to be trying to say. But when they frame certain people as like less than, or as if they aren't masculine because they engage in certain things, now in some cases, like that's what I was doing.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about the video? I don't care about the video.
Wait, what? Wait, no, hang on. Whoa, hang on. Don't run away. So in this case, my question was, so the video, like you said, was trying to portray it's like, hey, you should be strong and not like weak and not engage and indulge in your pleasures and be a weak man. And they show a video of like some TikTok kids like, hey, I look cute in this skirt. So clearly that video seems to be implying or communicating that like, hey, if you're a femboy, you're a weak man.
Was it specifically a kid who was in a skirt?
I don't know. He's probably like 16 or 17, 15, 16, 17.
Okay. But no, I don't really want to talk about the video.
Well, hang on. That's the whole point of the argument.
No,
the
entire point
it is though. If all these videos are like, yeah, we're all about positivity and making men strong, and then the other halves of the entire videos are like, yeah, don't be like the LGBTQ people, don't be a femboy, don't be these sort of people. That is objectively framing others as not manly and not strong, correct?
Mac, we're not talking about the video itself. We're talking about your behavior within the comments.
Well, yeah, but we were talking about okay, never mind. So, did you ask your last question yet?
Last question was, why didn't you respond to the people within the comments that gave that said that it was overwhelmingly positive in their regard?
Yeah, because it goes back to that other one, the first one we talked about. It's like, well, it was positive to me. It's like, well, that's not really the point. And that, yeah, that second person I did respond to. I responded to his comment. No,
Hmm.
I said it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but like that's great that it inspired you, but it would have inspired you regardless of like the negative modernity parts, right? And he's like, yeah, sure. I was like, yeah, that's all
Okay.
I would. That's the entire point of the video.
Okay, I can agree with that.
Yeah,
All right, that was my three questions then.
cool.
So let's see. Outside of the first question, I'm gonna go ahead and go off the limb here and say the second two came off as sloppy as shit.
Wait, what do you mean?
Oh, just the ones I tried to deliver. The delivery of my second 2 points came out very sloppy due to me involving and derailing the conversation way too much, which is on me as well. I think the first question I gave had a point to be had, but the other two ones I did a poor job explaining those, and that's on me.
Yeah, I think the issue was like if we go back to that first question, I think there's so here's like sort of like the or like not dichotomy, but here's the difference. If I and I even said this in my video, if the videos were critiquing actual ideas, like if they actually showed a video of someone being like, yeah, men are trash, kill all men, absolutely, you can absolutely criticize those people, fuck them. But you're criticizing them for their ideas. You're criticizing for what comes out of their mouth. With these videos, they're not really doing that. Most of them are just like, hey, here's a video of a femboy. Here's a picture of people at an LGBTQ rally. Here's a fat person.
But those are still words coming out of your mouth, though.
What?
Oh, sorry, you're referring to the videos themselves. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So attacking those people, it's like, well, they're not actually attacking you. They're not causing you any harm. Why are these videos all based around like putting these people down? And then when I come in and say, it's like, hey, it seems like but when I'm like critiquing people in the comments, I'm I'm critiquing their behavior. Like again, that person, it's like, yeah, it's cowardly. Yeah, this is snowflake behavior. Yeah, this is unmanly. This is pretty pathetic. That's all 100% true. But it's based off of their actions, the things that are actually saying. So when they double down and say, it's like, well, you're personally insulting me. It's like, well, no, it's not a personal insult. I'm basing off of what your actions are. Again, maybe that's just a difference between what we think of name calling. But I personally, I don't think calling a spade is name calling. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
No, calling a spade would still be regarded as name calling.
Okay, then yeah, I was
Especially when like their perception, like the way that they're approaching it is perhaps not the way that you're looking at it. Because I mean, the reception to what you were calling them compared to how what they were calling you, the reception was overwhelmingly in that person's favor. People saw that person as right over you. There's something that you're doing in the comment sections that is rubbing people the wrong way objectively.
yeah, I'm pointing out that their behavior and their justifications and their logical arguments for why they dislike the video don't hold any water, and they're based primarily on emotion.
But can you blame that entirely on the majority of people who are in the comment section? Can you say that out of all the topics that you've talked about, and also regards to toxic masculinity as a whole, videos where you have gone to much longer detail that go span about an hour long, talking detail about very sensitive topics, where those get overwhelming praise. What about the 10-minute one got such an overwhelmingly negative reception?
I don't know. Can you tell me?
I think it's just because you handled the comment section improperly. Because when I saw the video, I was indifferent to it, and I didn't really feel as negative towards anything about it. The only thing I felt negative towards was the way that you were talking to people in the comment section.
So you think most of the people who watched the video were totally cool with it, but then they went to the comment section, saw my interactions, and that's when they downvoted the video?
I saw a lot of comments bringing that up. A lot.
How many?
I didn't count specifically, but I would say about in the 50s or 60s, just from the top of my head.
Okay, I've gone through most of them because I've seen a lot of the comments. I don't recall that many. But
I'd be like,
regardless, what part of the comments were? So yeah, so what exactly were? I mean, again, if we're just talking about, it's like if someone says something like, "Hey, these videos help me," and it's like, okay, that's cool, but it's kind of an emotional argument. You're not actually addressing anything in the actual video. That'd be like that again, like to kind of like bring it back around. If I'm critiquing, it's like, hey, there's a lot of fucked up shit about Christianity. It's like, well, Christianity is very important to me. It's like, okay, but that has nothing to do with the argument being made, right?
Mac, if I called you onto my stream and you disagreed and I called you a pussy, would you not call that an insult?
Well, it depends on what sort of behavior that I like. What prompted you calling me a pussy?
I called you a pussy because you didn't want to come to my screen, to my stream.
But because I didn't refuse to come on.
Yes, you refused to come onto my stream when I offered and I called you a pussy, would you not consider that an insult?
It would be.
Okay, what's the difference between that and calling someone a snowflake or a coward?
Because neither. Because you're basing it off my behavior.
Mm. So it would be an insult.
Sure.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is,
well, when we're talking about, so yeah, this goes back to like when we're talking about either like name calling or insult. If I'm insulting someone's like behavior or like something they say or what they're doing, yeah, I think that's fine.
Do you think it's really something that'll make you look in good light, though?
Oh, I do not care. 100%. If I was totally cool with being liked, I would have taken the video down.
So you have no issue with being perceived in a negative light, regardless if it comes off the basis that you get to occasionally insult people who disagree with you.
If their arguments are actually logically sound. But if I point out their arguments are not logically sound or like make no sense or are based off emotion.
And what about Lamau's argument was not sound?
Which one? Oh, why did the person who was like these videos inspired me?
Yeah.
That because it had nothing to do with the point of the video. The video says like, hey, I'm all for the motivation, but there's no reason it has to come with the negativity because it's gonna inevitably lead to like a lot of toxic people coming into the environment, which it did.
All right, just go ahead and wrap that up then.
Yeah, I mean, like so this is like sort of my argument, or this is sort of like my frustration with a lot of these men. Like I think a lot of like young men in general today. I understand like there are a lot of men who were like very lost, very confused, and I again I've made videos on why that is, and that is a huge problem. But the problem is that when it comes to like sort of like a man's perception of masculinity, a lot of things have changed over the last, I don't know, maybe like 20, 30, 40 years, ever since the sexual revolution. The idea of like what is masculinity has become completely upended, and things have changed. Women are in the workplace, women are taking on more like traditionally masculine roles, and conversely, a lot of men are not allowed to step into those traditionally female roles. A woman can wear a dress, a woman can wear jeans, a woman can stay at home, a woman can go to work. I think women are given a lot more freedom in terms of transgressing their, traditional gender roles. However, unfortunately for men, they are not given that. They are not given that leeway. Men are still expected to act as like these like traditional masculine men, even in a world that has completely changed. And so yeah, a lot of men understandably are like they have no idea like what does it mean to be a man in today's society. And I understand that frustration, I understand that anxiety. But when I see stuff like this, with these sort of trends where instead of sort of helping men try to like find their own masculinity or reshape masculinity so men can still feel like men without feeling restricted, these sort of movements and these sort of whether it's reject masculinity or red pill, whatever, they almost want to funnel men into like these incredibly narrow views of masculinity. It's like, hey, you have to do this to be a man. But unfortunately, it comes with the side effect of putting other men down, or putting other, like, hey, if you wear a skirt, or if you're gay, or if you're I don't know. If you don't have muscles, it means you're not a man. Now, if you're critiquing character, integrity, courage, protecting your loved ones and taking care of your friends, that's all fantastic. I think that personally, I think that's what masculinity is all about. I think objectively, that's what masculinity is about. But unfortunately, I see this very superficial view of masculinity, and that's what I see a lot. And that's sort of what, like you kind of asked, like the incurious reaction I had to people in the comments. Sort of question is like, well, are you not curious as to why people react this way, are you not curious as to why a lot of men reacted this way? And I 100% know why they reacted this way. It's because when they found these things, and a lot of people you mentioned, they said, hey, these videos really helped me because they allowed me to sort of like, they gave me guidance on how to be a man. But unfortunately, it comes with the side effect of in order to feel like a man, I have to frame others as not a man based off of things that have nothing to do with their character or who they are as a person, but just superficial aspects like their sexuality or their choice of clothing. And I think that's very, very, very objectively very bad for men.
Okay, I can agree with that.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing I'd ask is, do you feel like they came off as strongly in the video?
What?
Like specifically, what you were saying that I agree with is that, hey, this part of this side of the video I disagree with strongly. I think like it's very toxic how it portrays this superficialized ideal version of what masculinity is. But I do think having
I
courage.
don't even think it's idealized. I actually think a lot of, I mean, like that's sort of the irony of like the embrace masculinity parts is they put up people, like they put up like Z's is like the face of the movement. Z's died at like 22 years old from a heart attack because he was so insecure with his body that he did a shit ton of steroids and then died when he was 22 from a heart attack in a sauna in Thailand. And now his entire family is like, his mother loses a son, father loses a son, people lost their friend. A lot of the other guys are like, they're huge steroid junkies. A lot of the guys have lied about it and actually made money off of poor young kids and given them body dysmorphia. So I don't think it's I actually think it's I actually didn't even touch upon that in the video, which I probably should have. That was actually probably a flaw in the video. I probably should have pointed that out. Now that we're talking about it.
Do you think the video could have been more detailed in this fiction of like, I'm not saying this whole thing is bad as a whole. I'm just saying that this parts about it is bad overall. Because it seems like when I was reading through the comments, a lot of the reception that I saw in it, they seem to have seen it as, you see this as a bad thing overall. Now, whether or not they watch the video the whole way through or they're overreacting, it's a very overwhelming amount of people who seem to take it that way. Do you think maybe that's just a flaw with the video itself?
I don't see how. If people actually pointed out in the video where like how they got that, then okay, then yeah. If you actually pointed to actual places where I said things like this or gave you that impression, that's absolutely fine. But from what I remember of watching the video, I was talking about, hey, here's this trend. I went over the top rated videos. I showed that a lot of the top comments were kind of weird and like one of them talked about like straight male culture, or like and some of the even top comments were they weren't even positive. They were like just attacking the other people. Like they weren't like there were some that were great. It's like, yeah, man, this really inspired me to work out. But then there were other top comments that were like, oh, those fucking disgusting femboys or whatever. And then I have to remember, but yeah, I did that a bit. And then towards the end, I was like, look, I'm not saying that working out or improving yourself is bad in any way, shape, or form. But there's a whole section where I say that. So yeah. So again, it's like, this is kind of going back to like what we were talking about. At some point I have to sort of, if I say I like dogs and everyone's like, oh, you motherfucker, you hate cats. Now, on one hand, I could be like, well, maybe I did. Maybe my messaging was off. Maybe I was sort of like, I didn't communicate my ideas correctly. But after rewatching the video, like that's the thing. If someone could point out, that's why I asked you again. If you can actually point out where my messaging was off, or where you think people could have like object if they were watching this video objectively, how could you get that message from this video? If you could point out a part that is like that, and like again, I've actually had situations in other videos where people have done that. And one of my Black Panther video, which is my third video ever, someone pointed out an argument I made it sound like I was like blaming black people for like their own like lack of representation. And I was like, I got defensive. I was like, no, I didn't. And so I rewatched the video and I was like, oh fuck yeah, I can see how you got that because I phrased that poorly. But when when I rewatched my own video, the masculinity one, I was like, I can't see how you could possibly get this from this video unless A, you didn't watch it, B, you watched it through a very subjective lens, like you were just watching it like so like I want to hate it that I'm just going to comment something negative, or C, you just were you secretly agreed with what I was critiquing and you just didn't like what I said.
Okay. Okay. I think this has gone on a bit longer than I was hoping it to. But I would confidently like to say that I think you have done a rather good job at refuting all 3 points, and I'd like to formally apologize to you for any inappropriate things I may have said that would be an insult to your character.
Oh no, not at all. But don't be afraid of doing so though. I think that's this actually might be like my own like version of toxic masculinity. I personally think that one of the reasons that a lot of our discourse, and this is actually kind of ironic, because what I often hear from a lot of people is like discourse has become this sort of, well, actually, there's two sides to it. I completely agree that in some cases, like on Twitter or YouTube, that discourse has become so vitriolic and hostile that it just becomes pointless. Like like if you're just like screaming back at each other and calling each other like fucker and asshole, nothing is going to be solved. However, I actually think that there is another polar opposite to that can be just as deadly, and it's sort of the I'm trying to think of, it's almost the I don't want to say peacekeeper, but it's like this attitude of like, well, everyone is entitled to their opinion and we shouldn't, critique, everyone can think what they believe and yada yada yada. I actually think that attitude can be just as harmful because have you heard of the paradox of tolerance? Have you heard that phrase?
Yeah. I've read up on that, yes.
Yeah, it's like, well, we want a society that is tolerant, but that means we have to be tolerant of people who are intolerant. And it's like, well, no, if you need a tolerant society, you have to draw a line somewhere. This comes up a lot with like free speech debates of like, we want freedom of speech, but if certain freedom of speech leads to certain people taking power that then limit free speech, or it creates a situation where some people's free speech leads to other people being restricted of their speech, that's when we get into like, and trying to find that balance, I think, is very difficult. But no, I appreciate that sort of, and again, that's why I was like, hey, if anyone actually does disagree, come on, because at the very least, we can actually like hash these things out. I almost get more upset at the people who are like, well, no, man, everyone is entitled to their own opinion and everyone can believe what they believe. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get pushback for it. If someone is like that's sort of like what we were talking about before of like, yeah, there are plenty of people who you are entitled to believe racist or homophobic ideas, sure. But you are not entitled to not get pushback for those ideas in a particular society that is trying to rid those. Because that's the only way that these things have been rid from society. That's the only reason these attitudes have changed over so much. If everyone just left everyone to their own devices, probably nothing would change. It's being exposed to different ideas and actually being challenged on certain ideas. Like I'm sure there are plenty of people out there today who were like, yeah, I don't like gay people. And someone has asked them, well, why? Can you actually think about it? Like, why don't you? And it kind of makes them go, actually, maybe there isn't really a reason. And maybe it won't happen right away. But that's sort of what causes people to actually be like, huh, okay, maybe I don't believe this. It's when you kind of get into these echo chambers where you believe things and you don't even know why you believe them. That's when stuff really gets scary and bad. So no, if you see any shit in any of my videos and want to challenge me on them, call me out anytime.
Okay, yeah, that's a nice offer. If it means anything, in my opinion, I think a big part of being an adult, more probably being what I would consider masculine, is going into an argument with the expectations of wanting to be wrong, so that you can learn from that. That's actually what I came to this discussion wanting to do. Is I honestly didn't expect it to go anywhere that made me look like in a positive light, but I wanted to. It was something that bothered me, and I wanted to confront you on it, especially seeing you were offering it.
Yeah, absolutely. Offers open anytime.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for the chat. I will go ahead and head on my way out.
Take care, man. And the phone sounded fine, by the way.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And sorry about the headset. Hopefully that didn't. You can get like a refund or yeah. I mean, I think if you fuck around with Discord for a while, you'll probably figure it out. It's just Discord's a shit platform.
No, it's fine. Honestly, the headset is actually very nice. Once I could actually get to work on games and shit, so I'll probably just dick around with it online.
Yeah, you'll figure it out. Discord, like it's. I think especially even with this mic, I think I actually like figured out by accident. I started like clicking random shit and it just started working, and I was like, okay, cool. It's not a very intuitive program, Discord. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it is. Especially when I first started, the app is a pain in the balls. But anyway, thank you very much for the chat.
Thank you, my man. Thanks for coming on.
All right, you too. Bye.
Oh, I'm sorry, Frame. Sorry about that, Frame. I found recently either viewers or completely separate creators judging and criticizing how creators deal with their community. Own culture, your own community. Leave creators to theirs. Well, yeah, it's hard because on one hand it's like, because it's hard because you end up, and I've kind of like realized this too when it comes to just YouTube in general. It really does. It does foster, and I don't think this is by not design. I don't think it's by design. I think it's just a consequence of this sort of style. YouTube channels and fandoms in general are in and of themselves echo chambers. They just kind of form that way. Like let's say you like Vosh, Vosh the streamer. Now there are some people in his community that disagree with him and they don't agree with him on everything. But the people who still engage and the people who still listen to him and follow him are on average going to be people who generally agree with him on things. And as the voice gets bigger, that ratio between people who agree with the person on a lot of things and people who disagree with them on certain things, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as that gets bigger, the people who maybe disagree with that person, they'll feel less inclined to voice their disagreements because they don't want to be mobbed by like 50,000 people who were like, because even if there are people who will like, disagree in good faith, there's always going to be like the 100 idiots who were like, well, fuck you, man, you're a fascist, yada yada yada. And so inevitably those people who maybe they like Vosh but they kind of disagree with some stuff, they'll inevitably end up leaving the community, and then you're just left with people who generally agree with them. And I'm not singling out Vosh in general. I think this is the truth for every content creator. Now, some content creators I think try to counteract that. Like I feel like I have to some extent. I try not to be just like, hey, it's my way or the highway on all issues. There are some issues I take like a very strong stance on, but I think that's more for I think it's more because my channel is mostly based around like media. So if I dislike, it's like if I say like, hey, the Northmen sucked, and you disagree, you're not gonna be like, well, I find this person appalling. And you might, but if you're more of like a political channel, like if you're talking about like actual like very heavy political topics, I think that can be a lot more. I think you're inevitably going to end up creating an echo chamber to some extent. And it's not, even if you do your best to try and like get both sides to be objective and to be sort of like even keeled, it's inevitably, because the entire platform is designed around people who follow you and subscribe to you. Like, there are some people who I am subscribed to on YouTube who I don't necessarily agree with entirely, but I do like hearing their perspective, like, even if I don't agree with them on everything, or even if I think that their general ideology is flawed or I don't agree with it, I'll still subscribe to them so I can listen to them and get their perspective, even if I don't agree with it. However, on average, that just simply is not the case for like most, whether it's YouTube or Twitter or whatever. The vast majority of people who are following you because they agree with what you're saying, more often than not. Like there's a certain, especially if you're talking about politics, if you're like, I don't know many socialists who are probably subscribers to Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro. They shit on him a lot, but they probably aren't going to subscribe to him on YouTube. There might be a few, but overall, it just simply isn't the case. Just like I don't think a lot of Crowder fans are probably subscribed to Vosh. Also, because you could argue that subscribing to a channel, I almost wonder if you could, if anyone could answer, is there a way is there any way to like get notifications for a channel without subscribing to them? Like, let's say I wanted to, every time Ben Shapiro posts a video, I want to know about it, but I don't want to subscribe to his channel. Is there a way to do that? Yeah, basically, Robbie, a general gist of it.
Meanwhile,
yeah, I don't think you can. You have to subscribe to a channel to get notifications. So in this case, I'm like, even if I did want to hear, I think Ben Shapiro is stupid, but like, even if I did want to hear his views on like shit that he's wrong about, I don't want to subscribe to his channel because technically subscribing to a channel is sort of like helping them in a way, even if it's just like a drop in the pond. Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, so that's sort of what I mean, where there's certain incentives on the platform. If you watch stuff a lot on YouTube, it'll try to notify you. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, good point, Freaky. I get that a lot too. I get like recommended videos from channels I'm not making an alt account. Yeah, but you're still subscribing. Like I just mean like the actual act of like subscribing or following someone is usually seen, and this isn't like a hard and fast rule. I think that like subscribing or following someone is technically seen as like an endorsement of that person. I don't think that is actually true. Like on Twitter, there are a lot of people who you can Mac watch but not endorse a channel. I could do that, but it's hard because I think like if you're following someone on Twitter, you might just be following that person to like I'm sure a lot of like left-leaning reporters followed Donald Trump on Twitter because they had to keep up with what he was saying, and so they could like shit on it, of course. But in general, especially on YouTube, subscribing or Twitter, I think often it is used as like a weapon. It's like, oh, look at who this person is following on Twitter. Look, this person's following Shapiro and Crowder, or this person's following all these like, tankies on Twitter. And it's kind of like, yeah. I think that's just inevitable. I don't think these platforms were designed like that. I think they were just designed to boost engagement. In order to keep someone on a platform, they have to like what they want to see. So yeah, I mean, maybe I can blame YouTube for a lot, but technically it is. Even if you dislike them, the attention helps their brand inherently. 100%. There was a funny comment on someone should make a Chrome extension for that purpose. That'd be based, actually. If you could like, hey, this way you can like keep tabs on these people you hate without like supporting them. Yeah, Jorik. It's like there was when people were talking about a perfect example was like the Marvel shit where they're talking about like She-Hulk and everyone's like It's like, well, Marvel's just putting out like She-Hulk. They're just doing this shit to like entice the fans so they get hate watchers and they get a lot of people talking about it. And of course, the response is like, okay, then why are you talking about it? Like, why are you still like Rings of Power? Like, I think like the vast majority of like attention Rings of Power got was probably from fans who like are not fans of the show, but like, you know, Tolkien fans who fucking hated it. But those people, you're still giving an engagement. You're still making it show up on, you know, Twitter trending and all that shit. If you really don't want something to, you know, exist, the best thing you can do is ignore it entirely. But I think sometimes that like hate impulse, and I'm guilty of this too. How many times have I like retweeted something stupid Jordan Peterson has said, and I'm like, it's like I can't help it. It's like, no, I could just ignore it and walk away and not help him by retweeting it. Bookmark their channels. Oh yeah, I could do that. Yeah, that works. The 5 I could try. Michael Hegwood. That's what happened. The PewDiePie people saw that he followed some right-wing channels. Yeah, it's like, because like technically subscribing to someone, actually, let me see actually. Oh, I can't switch it because I'm on this account. But yeah, I'll have to go through my subscriptions because I'm sure there are some people who I'm subscribed to that I may have subscribed to like years ago that I probably wouldn't want to be subscribed to today. Oh, you know, Elliot Hulse. I used to be subscribed to him because he was like a fitness guy. And he was kind of weird. He was kind of eccentric. But now, if you guys seen like Elliot Hulse now, dude's insane. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, Elliot Hulse's entire channel now is like promiscuous men are actually feminists. I don't know what that means. Oh, blood of Jesus, wash away my failures. I don't even want to touch that. Good wives don't deny sex. Awesome. Oh, God. But yeah, this is like everything. Oh, my God. Wait, hang on. Where's my display? Hey, where's my display too? Oh, it's right there. Is this gonna work? Yeah. Look at this shit. Oh my God. Turn your audio on your voice app a little. Oh, hang on. Hopefully that helped a little bit. Or hang on, let me bump up the good point. I hated Rings, but I hate watched all of She-Hulk. See, that's the thing. It's like I feel like I can't, unless I'm like doing a video on like, hey, here's like, because like I did my video on like HBO Watchmen or something. That was something where, sorry guys, sorry about the volume. It's not my fault. It's fucking Elliot Hulse's. It gets to the point where it's like there are plenty of shows where like I'll watch the first episode, I'm like, this is lame, and then I'll just stop watching it. But if I watch the whole thing, it's at least got to give me like it's giving me some sort of entertainment value. Whether I'm like watching it with my friends and we're laughing at it. And I don't know, if I do that, I probably wouldn't even, if it was, here's the thing. If it was that bad, I probably wouldn't even feel the need to make a video on it. Because I've talked about this before. I feel like if a piece of media is just like, if there's like a written story and it's like total shit, making a video on that is kind of redundant because what exactly what can I actually get out of this? That isn't just, I could make a video on She-Hulk just shitting on it for 30 minutes and make a killing. But what can I actually get from, can I make an actual video on this where we can actually learn something? And I don't think that I have never seen She-Hulk. I haven't even watched the first episode. I highly doubt I could find something where there's actual like, oh, here's some interesting writing mistakes that we can actually learn from. I do not think that fucking She-Hulk will have that. Maybe Rings of Power, maybe. Because I've heard on general it's just like aggressively mediocre. I don't know. Maybe Rings is really bad. But that's the thing too. It's like I can't even. I personally, I can't really trust a lot of the press for around like Rings of Power, because like there are people either like this is amazing, or there's others who are like this is a complete crock of shit, and I'm like I kind of feel like I can't trust either of your judgments. Like, because you're kind of playing the political game now. You're either hating it or loving it for like kind of political reasons, because it kind of aligns you with certain groups. There's more to be gained by the meta conversation around it. Yeah, agreed. I think it tells us a lot more how to make the most mid show ever. I honestly think that could be a good video. That could be. It's like, hey, here's this show or here's this movie that technically has not. Actually, Robbie, that's a good idea. If you got like, think of a movie that like you watched that like you didn't hate, but you thought it was just okay. Like, oh yeah, I watched the whole thing and I was like, okay, that was fine. And it's curious, like, okay, then but why was it just fine? What was fine about it? It wasn't bad, but it also wasn't that great. And that could be a fun exercise. How could we make this movie great? Take like a mediocre movie. What could we change that would make this movie great without changing that much? Like if you have to change the whole thing, like major elements, then maybe that's not good. But if you take like a mediocre movie and it's like, hey, now it's a great movie. What could you change that would do it? Would it just be, do you have to change like a certain character? Do you have to change a plot point? Do you have to just take the story in a different direction? I think that's actually a really interesting exercise. But if a movie is just complete shit, then it's like, okay, like where do you begin? Like, what are we even talking about? The Hunt is a good film. Oh yeah, I remember that came out. Or it got like pushed back, didn't it? Then like because it was like political. If House of Dragon wasn't out at the same time, more people would probably like it. Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I think like the whole Rings of Power thing. I have never read Tolkien, so I don't get that. I know the fandom is kind of like, but I don't know. Once shit like that gets kind of like poisoned by the culture war, it just sort of, I don't know. I just can't stomach it anymore. Like it gets to the point where it's like, even if I did have some inkling, hey, want to try Rings of Power? I'm like, you know what? No, I don't even want an opinion on it. Then again, here I am. I made a video on HBO's Watchmen and Last of Us Part 2. Oy. Those were the good old days. When I was like half a reactionary. No. No, I still am a little bit. 13 Reasons Why. Yeah, me and my girlfriend watched that. We loved that. But in like the worst way. But like, yeah, but Michael, 13 Reasons Why is a perfect example of like, if someone was like, how would you rewrite 13 Reasons Why? I'm like, bro, I don't even know where to begin. Like, the entire premise of the show is fucked up to me. The entire premise of the show is like flawed from a fundamental level. So trying to make also Michael, in season 1 of 13 Reasons Why, is it ever explained why Clay doesn't just sit down and listen to all 13 tapes in a row? Cause like he listens to one and then he goes out and like investigates, and then he listens to another and then he goes out and investigates. If someone gave me a box of like 13 tapes from someone who like committed suicide, I would like marathon that shit. I would want to know. I wouldn't just leave it up to the mystery. I'd be like, no, I'm going to listen to all this shit right away. What, are you insane? No, I'm going to pause 10 minutes through and just like, get a snack or go to work, and then I'll come back and finish it. Like, no, like what? What are you doing? That was so, and I understand it was like complete plot contrivance. Like it makes sense in the show why the character has to do that, because otherwise the show would be. Well, no, actually, no, you couldn't. No, I was gonna defend it, but then it was stupid. Yeah, I think they say it's because he's unable to do it because of his mental health. I don't know. But then of course in season 2 he starts seeing like a ghost Hannah, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? And then season 3 had that bitch Ani, the black chick, remember? And it's like me and my girlfriend were like, we're watching it and we're like, why are you here? You 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 add nothing to the fucking thing. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool, Robbie. If like each tape was like hidden across town and like there was a clue, or maybe, ooh, that'd be cool, Robbie. Like maybe in each tape, whatever the tape was talking about, Clay had to investigate to get like some sort of bit of information to then find the next tape. That would be cool because that technically would make sense. It would be Hannah saying like, "Hey, I want you to fully understand what happened to me to understand why I did this." But in order to do that, you can't just listen to these tapes. You actually have to go out there and actually, learn and talk to these people and really find out and understand them and find out. That actually could have been cool. It would have been kind of contrived, sure, but it would have made a lot more sense. Yeah, Robbie, you're fucking nailing it, bro. Yeah, then again, Michael, would it be like you guys made a scavenger hunt off a suicide note, and it's like, yeah. But then again, like just making the series in general, I think is kind of, God, that was so bizarre. Because remember when season 1 came out and everyone was like, it's supposed to, it's supposed to like promote mental health, and a lot of mental health professionals are like, it kind of feels like you're sensationalizing it and you're romanticizing it and you're actually just using it as drama fodder, not actually like taking, you're kind of like romanticizing Hannah as some sort of like angel who's here to show people the error of their ways. But no. Oh God, 13 Reasons Why. Yeah, there were 4 seasons of that shit, which is insane. Right? Yeah, there were 4 seasons of that shit. Holy fuck. How is it like received? And it doesn't have like the worst reviews. Oh yeah, that was a weird episode. That's a good point, NV. That's actually funny enough. Something I've to kind of bring the conversation. Thoughts on Alex from Playing with Fire? Oh God, it's so funny, Antonio. So I actually got onto Alex's channel a while back, and I was like looking at some stuff, and I actually thought Alex in general was like, I actually think he does give some good advice. I think that he is able to give sort of like giving like dating strategy without it being sort of like animosity towards women, because that was my big problem with a lot of pickup stuff, is that it would be like decent advice and they would like infuse it with like, yeah man, this is a good way to get a girl to like you, and it's like, okay, cool. It's like, yeah, because women are fucking stupid little bitches, like bitch children who have like the mental capacity of like a termite, so it's easy to get them to like you. And it was like, wait, hang on. Like, hang on, that's, we kind of like veered off track there. And so yeah, I think Alex's channel in general is pretty good. The problems I have with Alex is I think some of his stuff does veer into the manipulation. Actually, no, I shouldn't say manipulation category. I think it does lead into sort of simpy behavior. So, for example, Antonio, there's one video where Alex is talking about here's what you do if a girl flakes on you. And his strategy, I believe, I have to rewatch it, but I believe his strategy was like text her something along the lines of, I didn't take you for, or I seriously didn't take you for a flake, to try to like sort of like, get her to like, respond and like try to start the interaction again. Men, listen to me right now. If a woman ever flakes on you, don't even bother with her. I know in the moment it could be difficult, especially if you're just kind of getting into the dating scene and you just got like a first date, or like she's one of the first girls you're going out with and she flakes on you and you don't really have a lot of other options. there's that tendency to kind of want to like, well, how do I get her interested in me again? Or how do I sort of like, get this, how do I heat things back up again when she flaked? And the answer is do not. Like, just don't. Because consider if let's say if you have a day with a woman set up and everything's good, and the woman flakes, or, call like an hour before is like, hey, something came up and I can't go. Let's say a couple days later you text her and like things sort of, you're able to kind of like get her interested in again. She has already portrayed herself as someone who would flake on you. So what makes you think that things are going to be any different in the second time around? It's like, oh, well, she's more attracted to me, or I got her more invested. It's like, yeah, but for me personally, she already showed you her character. Like, there are plenty of girls who I've met who have done that, of like the last minute have flaked, and I'm just like, when I was younger, I probably would have been like, it's like, well, I have to kind of like, here's a perfect example, Antonio. I think this is, and I don't think Alex is like, I don't think he framed it this way, but I think this is what ends up happening. Let's say a girl flakes on me. Instead of thinking, what the mindset you should have is like, well, I kind of dodged a bullet there. She seems like she doesn't value my time. She flaked on me, and she doesn't seem like someone I probably would want to engage in a relationship with. Because why would I? Would you? Do you think that's a nice thing to do? No? Then yeah, this person, maybe they're a nice person, but they're probably not the person for me. Instead, it kind of frames and this is like an issue with a lot of pickup rhetoric. It reframes it as if like, oh, well, what did I do wrong? If a girl flaked on me, what did I do wrong? Did I not maintain attraction? Did I not keep her interested? And frankly, I think that is a waste of time. I think trying, like, focusing on that mindset will eventually lead you. And I think this is what my rule is: I don't pursue a woman who doesn't give equal or to a greater interest and effort. 100%, Aaron. Because what ends up happening is that your entire life ends up revolving around women who rejected you or who aren't interested in you. Like, in my pickup dates, I met guys who would, like, they could have like 4 or 5 women like begging to like to ride their dick. Like, hey, do you want to go out? Do you want to like hang over? Do you want to come and, Netflix and chill or something? But they would be obsessed with like, oh, there's this one girl who's like been like, playing hard to get for like 3 weeks. And I'm like, why are you focusing so much of your time and energy on this like girl who's playing games when you have like 4 women over here who will like jump your bones in a second? And it's because that's sort of the issue at pickup. It becomes the game. It becomes about the game. It becomes about oh, I have to get this girl who's dodging me. I have to get her attracted to me. I have to get her and win her over to me. Where that's, personally, I think that's a very simpy. I think that's a very like simpy, low value mindset. A true high value mindset is like, hey, if this chick doesn't want to have a good time with me, that's on her. It's her loss. I'm gonna go find a chick who does want to spend time with me. And yeah, Antonio, Amitabh, 100%. Oh no, sorry, Aaron. Sorry, you had 3 A names in a row. 100%, Aaron. I think you are saving yourself a fuck ton of mental health in the long run. You're putting so much time and effort and stress into this chick who may or may not end up like vibing with you, or because like maybe you spend like 3 weeks and you set up a second date and you're like, yeah, I got her, and she flakes again. And you're like, well, fuck. It sets the trend for the rest of the relationship. Exactly. Here's my hot take, 100%. I completely agree that there are a lot of women out there who are complete brats and bitches and like will do whatever they want to dudes. In my mind, I think that is a huge portion of that is 100% guy's fault. It's not the particular guy. It's not so much that like, hey, if you get flaked on by a girl, it's not your fault. It's the fault of the 5 other guys who she flaked on 5 times in a row, and the guy was always like, yeah, totally, let's go. Yeah, come on. Because so many guys are like, they're so desperate to like get a chick, they'll do anything, and they'll put up with so much bad behavior. And and there are a lot of women who are like, well, if I can treat dudes like this and they don't object, like, why wouldn't I? And it's like, no, you shouldn't. It's it's like, no, you have to set boundaries in a relationship. And I'm not saying that about all women. There are plenty of women who are adults and who act mature without needing, negative reinforcement. They're just good people because they're good people. They're respectable people because they're respectable people. But I think for a lot of women, that sense of entitlement a lot of guys complain about by some women is due to other men basically just letting them run. How many times have I've heard dudes in relationships be like, yeah, man, my wife or my girlfriend, she just does whatever she wants and never thinks about my feelings, and is always kind of mean to me, and breaks up and flakes on dates and does whatever. And I'm like, what? Why are you with her? Like, what? Then break up with her. Why are you still with her? You're like blaming her for the fact that you're still with her. I think the same thing happens to women a lot, to be fair. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, Mike. I was just talking from a male perspective. But yeah, I think a lot of the behavior that people perpetuate, like toxic behavior, is because other people. A perfect example is guys who are like, it's like, well, I'm going to act like an asshole because girls like assholes. No. Fucked up women like assholes. Like if you just want to date really toxic, fucked up women your entire life, go for it. Act like a dirty piece of shit asshole. But if you actually want a decent relationship with someone who's fun and actually respectable and actually has self-worth, it's just not gonna fly. All that negging shit and being an asshole for for a lot of maybe women who are more immature or sort of have confidence issues, that'll work. For actual self-confident women, women who are actually decent partners and actually are mature and have respect for themselves, if you ever tried to pull that asshole shtick on them, they would just roll their eyes and walk away because they've seen it a million times before. They're like, oh, here's a little boy trying to act like a big man, because they know exactly what you're doing. The play hard to get thing means that sometimes it's easier for women to just ghost or flake because it means you don't have to convince a guy that, no, I'm not interested. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, that's what's so funny about that. That's a good point, Envy, when it's like, oh, she's playing hard to get. Or maybe she doesn't fucking like you. and here's the thing. If she is playing hard to get, then why do you like her? I've actually heard stories about that where guys are like, it's like, well, this chick over here, she was playing hard to get and she told me I want you to fight harder. Gentlemen, if a woman ever says that to you, I wanted you to try harder. You asked me out and I said no, but I wanted you to try harder. Get away from that woman. Run. Do not ever talk to that woman again. It's that sort of person that will fuck up your life. Because that sort of mentality of oh, I'm setting a boundary because I want you to cross that boundary. No, do not ever talk to people like that, man or woman. No, that's fucked up. That is not oh, it's the game though. It's flirting. No, that's weird. That's that's getting into a weird place. Maybe she said no 5 times, but I just have to try more. And honestly, and V, that's sort of the issue. The issue is that in some cases, a guy will go out to a girl and ask her out, and she says no, and then he'll hear it's oh, she wanted you to try harder. So next time he goes up to another girl, and she says no, but she means it, he'll think, oh, she's just playing hard to get. It's not, and this is the key. It's not a man or woman thing. It's a toxic person and a non-toxic person problem, man and woman. There are men and women who are incredibly toxic, and they deserve each other. The problem is trying to find people who are not toxic and actually have healthy views of relationships. If you want to, that's kind of the whole shtick with pickup, is that it kind of teaches you to deal with toxic women, basically. Because if you're actually dealing with non-toxic women, you don't need pickup. You don't need game. You don't really need quote unquote game. You just need to be yourself and put yourself out there, and as long as you have other shit going on in your life and you're in shape and all that stuff, you got all that squared away. If you have to put in this extra effort of I have to build attraction with her, I feel like you're doing something wrong, or you're making this too difficult. 99% of it is stuff that you can't control. So by obsessing over the stuff like that, as long as like you have prepared, as long as you're in good shape, as long as you're well groomed, have a lot of shit going on, you've worked on your self-confidence, your conversation skills, all that stuff. I think if you feel like you have to modify your behavior to attract women, there's something wrong there. Oh yeah, Antonio, I remember that skit. And he's like, I'm not just gonna rape you. What are you, insane? Yeah, do not ever talk to women like that. That's nuts. God, that's weird. In many cases, that's another perfect example when guys are like, it's like, well, yeah, sometimes women feel shamed for having sex, so they may not want to like openly say they want to have sex with you. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. Like, I get that. I understand what you're saying. I sympathize with it. But I do not want to date a woman like that. Just me personally. If I can't talk to a woman about sex like in a comfortable manner, if it's like this taboo subject, I don't you should not be having sex with that woman. That's weird. I think that's like if you're like into sex but like you get embarrassed talking about it. I don't know. Personally, and that's just personally for me. Like I think that's like, I don't know. That just kind of was weird to me. Bit ironic coming from Louis. Oh, Antonio, I guess Alex feels a flake ghost isn't always a rejection. Being in a place like Miami, a lot of women and men in the area can get away with not being an adult. Exactly. But that's the whole thing, Antonio. I agree with you. I don't think a flake is always a rejection. But if a woman ever does flake like that, so here, let's put it this way. Let's say I am texting a girl and we set up a date and she flakes on me. So there are two possible explanations. One, she just lost interest. She's no longer interested in going out with me. Or two, she was like playing a game. She wanted to see how I would react to it, to see if I would like, ooh, is he gonna get mad, or is he gonna, I don't know, like, pop off, or is he gonna be respectful, or how's he gonna play this? In either situation, I do not want to talk to that woman anymore. Even if a woman flakes, hoping that like to try to like, ooh, yeah, we're playing a game. No, I'm like, nope, I don't care. I'm too old for that shit. I do not want to do this shit where I have to like second guess whether I'm interested in you. I think, and that's the thing. When I was younger, I used to put up with that shit, and I used to like, I would chase. There were plenty of lovely girls who were like, hey, I want to hang out with you. Want to hang out tonight? And I was like, no, sorry. I want to try to get with these chicks who like keep like playing hot and cold and keep trying to fuck with me. That whole thing about some girls liking dudes who like treat them like crap. Same thing goes with dudes and women. 100%. Especially dudes who like who have like a decent amount of sexual experience. They almost kind of get bored by like, like the nice girl. They almost want like, oh, I want that alpha bitch. I want the chick who's playing hard to get. There's something mysterious about her. But really, it's just like, you're just like, the same way some girls are attracted to fuck boys, you're just attracted to fuck girls. It's like, there's no difference. It's the exact same thing. Oh, but yeah, so Antonio. So yeah, that's my issue with Alex. I think he leans in a little bit too much to that stuff. However, Antonio, did you see his recent interview with Vosh? Where he was trying to defend Andrew Tate. Oof, he really did not do well in that. Basically Alex's argument was like, I don't think Andrew Tate is misogynistic. I just think that he thinks women need a man's guidance because they're not intellectually capable of making decisions on their own as well as men can. And it's like, and then he unironically like compared it to like women as pets. He said like, well, I can love my pet, but I don't hate my pet, but I love my pet and think I have to take care of it because it's lesser than me. Or like, it was something like that. It was like, it was awful. I was like, Alex, what are you doing? Stop it. And in his defense, I don't think he was actually making that argument. I think he was trying so hard to defend Tate that he ended up saying a lot of stupid shit. And I don't know why. I think he knows Tate personally, so maybe that clouded his judgment. But I was like, bro, what are you doing it? Isn't that what Tate said in his own interview? Oh, I haven't seen that one. The Piers Morgan one. I haven't seen that yet. I kind of got bored of Tate after he got kicked off YouTube. I was into it for like a little bit, and then I was like, this dude's an idiot. That's the thing too with like Tate. It's like with Jordan Peterson, at least like for me personally, like, yeah, that's kind of what the argument was, Envy. It's like, I don't hate women. I love them, but I think they need a man's protection because they're not capable of making decisions on their own as well as a man can. And it's like, okay, so you're framing women as an intellectually inferior species to men, basically. And it's like, it's like, well, I don't hate them. It's like, maybe I shouldn't say hate. Maybe, I think that's the problem, though, is like hate. Because we even had that situation in this talk I just had when I said homophobic. It's like, well, phobia. Like, people get caught up on that part. Like, usually like colloquially, homophobia is related to sort of like bigotry or bigoted ideas towards gay people, negative feelings or attitudes towards gay people. Not necessarily like I hate, like, I see gay people and I see a gay couple kissing and my fists are balled in rage or something. You know, it's not usually what we're talking about when we're talking about homophobia or racism. You know, it's not usually like, it's like, oh, I hate black people. It's like, you can still be racist and not hate, like, view black people as like evil incarnate. It's like, you can still, but you can still spread ideas that make black people or people of certain races in a negative light. And I think that's kind of what they got hung up on in the Alex and Vosh debate, where it was like, Alex kept focusing on, it's like, well, I don't think he hates women. I just think he has a lot of these, but he has a lot of these sort of like backwards views. Is that hate? Yeah, that's the thing, Envy. It's like, I don't hate gay people. I just think they're sinful and they're disgusting. And like, or that's sort of like the Catholic thing of like, or the Christian thing of like, I don't hate gay people. I just hate what they do while being gay. And it's like, like, I don't know. That seems, or I don't, or what is it? Hate the sin, not the sinner. I think that's kind of bullshit. I think that's kind of, you're talking about a fundamental aspect of someone's personality, like their sexuality. It's like, I don't know. Alex seems to have a bias towards men's issues, but won't give the same charitability to women's issues. Yeah, I haven't seen all that much with Alex in regards to that. I do think that is a massive issue in like the manosphere, where a lot of manosphere guys will like really talk about like, hey, if like men are struggling or men are doing a certain negative thing, here are a lot of reasons why. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's good. It's good to understand why, if men are doing something generally bad throughout society, you don't just want to say it's because they're men and they fucking suck. It's like, no, let's actually talk about this. Why do men do these things that are seemed as like not good for society? And that's good. You want to humanize it. You want to empathize. You want to understand why it's happening, so then you can figure out how to fix it and make it stop. But a lot of manosphere dudes, and I think a lot of the manosphere dudes do that very well. But when it comes to women's behavior, they just go in the complete opposite direction. They're like, well, the reason women do this is because they're fucking, cruel sluts who just love watching you. Like, for example, I use one of them in my video. Let's say you go to a bar and you're talking to a girl and you ask for a number and she gives you a number. But then the next day when you text her to set up a date, you realize it was a fake number. Now, what I would say, it's like, what I would tell the guy, it's like, well, maybe she just wasn't interested, and maybe it was like she kind of felt pressured. Maybe not like that you did anything wrong, but maybe she was just like, I don't know this guy. Maybe I'll give him a fake number, and then I won't have to deal with this again. as opposed to, hey, because maybe she had an experience where, hey, I rejected a guy and he got really aggressive and called me a cunt and like, you know, got scared me or something. I'm not saying that like that behavior is like okay. Like I would be like, well, you know, that's not a good thing to do to someone. But like I'm coming at it from a perspective of like, hey, you shouldn't just look at every situation as if the person, if here's a good tip in generally in life. If someone does something that you take offense to, try not to always assume that they're doing it with malicious intent. I'm not saying that like you shouldn't call people out or you shouldn't tell people if they do something wrong. Like if, you know, if let's say someone let's say a close friend of yours doesn't call you on your birthday. You can communicate to your friend. It's like, hey, I was kind of upset that you didn't call me on your birthday. Or that you didn't call me on my birthday. It kind of hurt my feelings. That's fine. That's good. That's good communication. What I mean is like, don't just assume it's like, oh, well, Becky didn't call me on my birthday. She must be doing it as a slight against me. She's trying to hurt me. She's trying to hurt my feelings. Because 9 times out of 10, that's just not the case. 9 times out of 10, when people do stuff that you might find offensive or that hurts your feelings, it probably was either just due to like a miscommunication or due to them just kind of like being absent-minded or them just not realizing it was important to you. And that, again, that doesn't really excuse it. Yeah, reserve judgment, Richie, in a way. Especially when it comes to like, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. Yeah, it's a good sort of like base level thing. But also, Richie, to your point, reserve judgment. Again, it's okay to communicate if something hurt your feelings, but don't try to judge as to why they did it. Especially when it comes to stuff like, hey, let's say you're chatting on Tinder with a girl and she just, after like a day of talking, she unmatches you. Now, I could think to myself, it's like, oh, well, I bet that fucking bitch is out fucking chatting. I bet she was just toying with me. I bet she's laughing with her friends about all our messages right now. I could think that. Or I could think, oh, maybe, I don't know, maybe she did it by accident. Maybe, I don't know, maybe she got back together with her boyfriend. Maybe she was drunk and she just, fuck, I downloaded Tinder and now I have to delete it. Maybe she just got bored. Like, whatever. I'm not going to, especially with this person, because this is a person I'm probably never going to interact with. I'm never going to speak to again. I'm never going to see again. So why am I letting that small interaction with them ruin, like put me in a bad mood and make me like angry? But I see that a lot in the manosphere, where they'll take actions by women in the worst possible light. Oh, if a woman stops texting you, it's because she was just toying with you and wanted to watch you squirm, because women love doing that because they're manipulative little harpies. It's like, what? Like, that's just weird, bro. Like, why are you jumping to that conclusion? Because again, if you're a guy and like a girl is offended by something you did, that can be like, oh, well, I understand that hurt your feelings, but I didn't mean to. It wasn't intentional. And I think that is a healthy view. Now, that's not to say if there's like a pattern of that stuff, or if you've communicated to someone that like, hey, I don't like when you do this, and they keep doing it, that's intentional. And that's when you have to cut that person out of your life. And that's when you can, okay, I've told this person that doing this action bothers me. They've done it 5 times in a row. I'm going to make the judgment that this person is doing it on purpose, and I'm going to remove them from my life. That is 100% healthy and 100% valid. But if you just jump to the worst possible conclusion every time someone seems to do something you might find offense to, that's just going to lead to that's just going to tire you out. It's just going to lead to you like getting mad and angry at them for no reason, which may have just been an honest mistake. Or, guys, how many times have you sent a text to a girl or something and she doesn't respond, and like in your head, like the fucking goblin in your head is like, oh, I bet she's ignoring me. Oh, I bet she's laughing at my message. And like, oh, I bet she doesn't like me anymore. Yada yada yada. And then like the next day she's like, oh fuck, sorry, I fell asleep. Yeah, let's go out. And then you feel like an idiot. You're like, oh fuck, I did all that worrying and like second guessing and judging for no reason. And it's like, it's not your fault. It's like your mind just does that. That happens to me so much. Like I'll text someone something and they won't text back right away, and I'm like, oh god, what if they're angry at me? What if they're pissed off? And then like they text me back 10 minutes later. It's like, okay, yeah, it sounds good. And I'm like, fuck. I just spent 10 minutes like worrying and like being anxious about basically nothing. Are you giving people the benefit of the doubt has improved my mood? Yeah, and think of it more as like for your own sake, right? Because it really isn't about like if I go to Starbucks and the barista's a real bitch to me, I could let that ruin my entire day. It's like, oh, this barista, she was a total bitch. I'm gonna be upset about it. Like I can't believe she did that. Or I could just say, you know what? Maybe she had a rough morning. It happens. I'm not gonna worry about it. And then I just walk away and I forget about it. And again, that's not even for her sake. It's for your own sake. Like, why are you gonna let that one negative interaction just ruin your entire day? Just think to yourself, hey, you know what? Oh, oh my God, there was a great video I just saw. I forget what it was, but there was a woman who was talking about her mother, and her mother is like a very toxic person, like very just negative and toxic. And the person was like, so how do you like reconcile that? How do you not let the fact that your mother is super toxic ruin your day or ruin your mood? And the woman said something. It was an excellent line. She said, I just told myself I am sure it is a lot harder to be her than to be with her. And I think that's like a good, like if you've ever met someone who's like just very negative in your life or very toxic in your life, and you think to yourself, it's like, oh man, this person like makes me upset. They're very negative. I don't like them. They just make me feel like crap. Reframing it as if almost like what what caused this person to become like this? Why is this person so negative? Why is this person so angry? And in many cases, it's because, well, they probably had a really hard life. Now, I'm not saying that you should accept that negative behavior. However, just putting it into perspective of like, you know what? I'm sure this person has a lot of shit going on. And I'm sure this person has like a lot of crap they're dealing with. And that's why they're so negative and hateful. Again, doesn't mean you have to put up with it. You should, I probably wouldn't want to hang out with that person anymore. But just at least trying to empathize a little bit, I think is good for your own mental health. Because otherwise that person will just, every time you interact with them, they'll just ruin your day. And you're letting them ruin your day. But yeah. Yeah, Alex, that's the thing too. Advice of talking to a lot of women is good advice. Getting into that needy behavior is very common. And that's what ends up happening. It's kind of like, it's hard for guys to start out because I think I've said it before. If you're a guy and you've like gone out, if you've like, you know, you've maybe had a girlfriend or two, you've gotten laid a few times, you know, women, you've had positive experiences with women. And then if you go, let's say you go to a bar and you ask out a girl and she rejects you. Well, that might suck. Oh, I got rejected. But in your head, you're like, well, hang on. I've been laid a few times. I've had girlfriends. I've had positive experiences with women in my past. Therefore, this one woman rejecting me doesn't mean I'm ugly. It doesn't mean I'm unattractive. It just means that this woman didn't like me. So the more success you have with women, the more each individual rejection just doesn't faze you. You're like, oh yeah, she didn't like me, but there are plenty of other chicks who do. But if you're a guy and you've never had any positive experiences with women, like you've never had a girlfriend, you've never been laid, you've never even had a kiss, and like every woman you've ever asked out has rejected you, every time you ask a woman out and she rejects you, it's like every single woman in the world rejecting you. And that's why it's so hard for like guys who are like, you know, sort of like, you know, incel, quote unquote, you know, in that phase, or like guys who have very, very low experience with women. It's so hard to get them to kind of like, you know, to try to get them over that hump, because every time they get rejected by a woman, it's like reminding them of every other woman in their life who has rejected them, and they have no positive experiences to fall back on. And that's why it's so difficult for a lot of guys who are like really, really down bad to convince them to give it a shot. Because rejection for them is a lot more mentally taxing for, say, rejection for me or someone who has had a lot of experience. Because, like, if you've had a lot of experience, here's a perfect example. Let's say you've won, I don't know, let's say you're I don't know, let me see. Oh, geez. You've done a couple open mic nights, and you've gotten good reception. And then you do one open mic night, and you get bad reception, and you get booed. It's like, oh, it sucks. Yeah, but, you know, there's plenty of other times where I got good reception, and that makes you feel good. And that makes you be able to, like, oh, that time I got booed, whatever. But if the first time you go to an open mic night you get booed, you're probably not going to want to do it again. Because you're like, well, fuck that. I'm going to get booed every time. And that's unfortunately why it's so hard for... That's why for a lot of guys who are, like, really down bad, like, you know, like incel, you know, in that sphere, that's why a single positive experience with a woman, like just getting, you know, a girl flirting with you or getting a girl's number or getting laid even once, sometimes that one good experience can completely get a guy out of his black pill incel phase. It's like, you know what? I just wanted to feel like someone out there found me attractive or found me desirable, and now I'm past this, and now I can go on with my life. Rejection will still hurt. I'll still be disappointed, but I'm not gonna fall into that like really bad negative mental space. Yeah, Alex, and that's how the black pill grift works. That's why, and even the red pill to some extent. A lot of red pill dudes will say, you know, it's like, well, you know, those black pill guys have it wrong because we're just telling guys the truth, and they can still try to get women and try to like have relationships. So we're just telling them the truth. But if as a red pill content creator or red pill guru, if you frame relationships or women as something that are so toxic and so, like, how many times have you heard guys say it's like, you know, I hear all this dating stuff and all these games and all this like second guessing and all this like bullshit. I just don't want to deal with that. Like, why would I want to go out with someone who is going to play games and do all this shit? Well, exactly. No reasonable person would. So a lot of red pill dudes end up creating black pill dudes because they're like, they frame women as such, like, they frame dating women as such like this horrible thing that's going to like destroy your life and cause you so much pain and suffering. And then when the poor dude's like, well, maybe I just won't try to date women, the red pill dudes are like, oh, I can't believe you're giving up. It's like, well, yeah, why the fuck wouldn't I? You're framing relationships as something that's like so negative and so just no, like all risk, no reward. Why would I subject myself to that? And I really think red pill is, most red pill content I think is black pill content. There's no distinction between the two. From a strictly like content basis, like if you actually listen to what they're saying, any reasonable person who would listen to like a red pill dude's view of women, why would you ever want to deal with women? Like think about that. If everything that red pill dudes say is true about women and about relationships, as a man, why would you ever want to engage with women at like whatsoever? Like, oh my God. Like, even listening to it, I'm like, why would I want to date women? It's like you're framing women as like entitled, bratty, selfish, cutthroat, cruel, like just women who will just use you for your money and then toss you aside when someone else comes along, or pretend they like you and then marry you and then divorce you for all your money. It's like, well, I'm just not gonna deal with women. If I really believe all that, why would I ever deal with women whatsoever? But then guys will like inevitably, of course, they'll be like, well, yeah, I just won't date women. I'm going to go black pill and just not deal with it. And then red pill dudes are like, oh, I can't believe these guys are giving up. It's like, well, yeah. I think part of it, Robbie, is I think it's sort of like the fitness. It's sort of like the personal trainer paradox, right? Wow, men suck. Why am I attracted to them? Oh, absolutely. That shit's fucking stupid. I hate that shit. We were talking about that on during the talk with the dude. Like that shit, like kill all men. But it's not. I don't really mean that. It's like I know you don't really like. I understand. Like here, let me put it this way. I don't mean to. I understand that saying if someone says kill all men and someone says kill all women, I understand that in the general like society, those two things technically don't really mean the same thing. Those two things, like from like a serious, like if I hear a woman say kill all men, I'm like, yeah, she probably is just like, just kind of memeing. If I hear a dude say kill all women, I'm gonna be like, oh, geez, like that's because that's just sort of how things, in our certain society, that's kind of how it worked out. However, that doesn't mean that like a woman saying kill all men, it's like I just don't say that. That's dumb. Just that sort of shit, just stop it. Is it as bad as the other? I wouldn't say so. Is it as serious as the other? I wouldn't say so. But just don't do it. It's just not cool. It's like is being racist towards white people as bad as being racist towards black people? Well, I mean, no, because like being racist towards white people can't cause the same sort of like destructive disenfranchisement that being racist towards black people has. Sure, but that doesn't mean that being racist towards white people is now okay. It's like if you're like actually being bigoted towards white people, it's like, yeah, just chill, bro. Exactly, Envy. They're not really thinking about that. It's like you hear dudes. It's like feminism hates men, and it's like, well, yeah, it's like, well, there are some women out there who do say shit like men are toxic, men are fucking kill all men and all that shit. And now, to be fair, I think that is completely overblown. I don't really see that much. Like generally, feminism, I don't actually see them saying like kill all men or anything. I think it's mostly like Tumblr, like stupid Twitter and Tumblr bitches. However, those few examples can be blown out of proportion, and it's like, hey, this is a much bigger problem than it actually is, and that can still have an effect. Especially like when you go on YouTube and you get like clip compilations of like feminist clip compilations. It's actually like being catered to take like the worst feminists of all time and to shove them in dudes' faces. It's like, hey, here's what feminists think of you, and it's like despite the fact that like 90% of feminists don't believe this shit, it's still going. You have to understand how this behavior can be used to paint the entire movement as such, and that's why I actually get more upset when feminists do that shit, or like when women do shit like kill all men or that stuff, because like better. You talk all day about like, hey, how saying like casually misogynistic comments can lead to like attitudes towards women in society. But then you turn around and say like kill all men, it's like, oh, well, we don't mean it like that. It's like, yeah, but you should know better. You know how this sort of stuff can like persist, and then you start getting people who actually believe it, and then it leads to bad things. Exactly, Alex. Funny enough, I actually had a falling out with a friend over this, where we were like, hey, just if we're talking to someone who's kind of like on like the black pill red pill sphere, you can't just jump in and talk about like, hey, let's talk about like feminist theory or like patriarchy. It's like, you don't want to just, because it's just gonna fall on deaf ears. It's not. You kind of have to ease them into it. Like, hey, let's talk this over. It's just not gonna work. But yeah, that Alex convo with Vosh was fucking shit. It was really bad. Oh wait, crap. Who are we talking about? I think I saw a comment that I wanted to comment on. Yeah, I don't remember what. But anyways, yeah. So to your point, Alex, I agree with some of his stuff. I disagree with some of it. But yeah, from that one conversation with Vosh, it was unfortunate because Alex had actually had a conversation with Vosh before that, and they actually found a lot of like common ground, and a lot of Vosh's audience were like, hey, this guy actually seemed like he was in good faith, and I actually like what he had to say. And then when he came on to defend Tate, it was like, oh, well, never mind. Fuck this guy. Also, Alex also talked about, like, he kind of did that line. I remember because Vosh had a conversation with an MRA about this, where Alex kind of framed, when we're talking about like sexual assault, Alex kind of framed it as if like, well, only evil people sexually assault and rape women. And Vosh tried to like explain, it's like, look, that's not really, when we're talking about sexually assault, we're not just talking about dudes who are like malicious and like, haha, I'm a rapist. It's like when we're talking about like consent and sexual assault, it's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more gray. Like I even talk about it in my video. It's like, guys, I'm not saying that like you're a bad person if you do certain stuff, but you have to understand that you have to kind of see it. If you're on a date with a woman or a woman comes over your house, you kind of have to put yourself in her shoes. You have to kind of say like, hey, the Always Sunny, it's about the implication, you have to kind of understand, try to put yourself in her shoes and try to see it from her point of view. And it's like, hey, would I feel 100% safe in this environment? Would I feel 100% comfortable saying no to this person in this environment? Or would I feel a bit of coercion or like sort of pressure to maybe act a certain way? Again, that doesn't mean that you're doing so maliciously. It's not like that you're trying to like do this to get her to fuck you by like tricking her. However, it's just a good idea that like, we don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. You don't want to make a woman you're interested in uncomfortable. You don't want to feel like someone's doing something for you just because you're putting pressure on them. So it's always good to be aware of these things and just to be aware of them. I think that's what a good partner or someone who's of good character would do. And that's what Vosh was talking about, consent with alcohol, consent with, if a good example, it's like if you ask a woman throughout the night to fuck and she says no 5 times, but on the 6th one she says yes, it's like, well, is she just saying that because she's like, well, if he's just going to keep asking and not leave me alone, eventually is he going to start getting angry at me? Again, it's like, is that person like guilty of rape or sexual assault? No, but it's like, there does seem to be a situation there. There do seem to be factors there that may have led to a lot of pressure being put on her to acting a certain way, which as men, in most cases, we as men don't have to deal with that, because if I go over a chick's house and she asks me like 5 times to fuck and I'm like, no, I might feel pressure, but there's no threat of danger on me in general, because I'm 220 pounds, like in general. Not to say that that's still good of her to do. I'm not like that's still kind of shitty of her. She should respect my boundaries. However, there is that sort of like, there's just that sort of like factor that there's that certain piece of the puzzle that isn't present for men in most cases. In that case, the innocency of the guy's part is now in question, right? Well, that's sort of the issue, Richie. Is like now it gets to the point where it's like, well, that, and then Yaum just applying one's power to have sex in any way like that is sexual assault. But here's the problem: what if guys do stuff like that without kind of realizing it? What if guys kind of were raised in the culture that says shit like, oh, she says no, she wants you to keep trying. She's just playing hard to get. Those sort of attitudes. So that might result in a guy who's completely, he's not trying, he's not malicious, he's completely not trying to be, pressure her in any way, but it might lead him to taking actions that put pressure on her without him even realizing it, because he thinks, oh, that's what she wanted me to do. And so in that case, are you still putting pressure on that woman and trying to get something? Yes. But is the person who's doing it being malicious? No. However, yes, that's what people mean when we talk about rape culture. We're not talking about people are just running around. It's like, yeah, bro, rape is cool. Let's do it. It means that a lot of attitudes have been normalized that can lead to this sort of, hey, if a woman says no 10 times, but she says yes, hey, she said yes, and it's cool, right? And it's like, well, and he doesn't think he's a rape. And that's what's even more pernicious. It's like there are plenty of guys who I'm sure who have done stuff like that who had no malicious intent at all. And if you were to kind of like, when they kind of come around and sort of, if you were to kind of explain it to them, they would have been like, oh, fuck, I didn't even realize that. Like, I didn't even think of that. Like, fuck. And a lot of guys would probably be like, shit, I really am sorry. I didn't realize I didn't even think of that. If a woman comes over my house and it's just us in the apartment, I didn't even think. It's like, oh yeah, shit. she's like 5'2", 100 pounds. I'm 5'10", 220. If I ask it, there's sort of like, there's a very certain what's the word I'm looking for? The implication, quote unquote, the implied pressure there, the implied dynamic of, hey, this guy, if I say something he doesn't like, he might not take it well, and if he doesn't, I'm in a very dangerous position. But just being aware of that, just trying to make it like, just being like, hey, man, if you don't want to do anything, or the best thing you can do is if a person does set those boundaries, be respectful of them. Like, hey, I don't think I want to do anything tonight. Totally cool. That's another thing that, like, Antonio, to your point, I think Alex says, he was talking about it a lot in the chat with him. He mentioned something like, if a girl says, hey, we're not having sex tonight, in most cases it probably will lead to, like, that means she's thinking about it and probably wants to fuck you. The problem with that is, like, I understand in some cases that is true, but the problem is that, like, there are cases where a woman might say that and it means that she does want to have sex. And there are cases where she might say that, but it really means she doesn't want to have sex. And the problem is that for many guys who are more socially adjusted, they can tell the difference. They can tell if a woman's like, sort of like, are we flirting? Are we smiling? Are we having a good time? Is it sort of like implicit? Or is she like, no, I am not having sex. I do not want to do this. And for most, socially adjusted guys, they can tell the difference. You can kind of tell, you can sort of pick up on it. You can act accordingly in a situation. But for a lot of guys who are like, who don't have that social skill set, who don't have that sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Social awareness, there's a term for it. Crap. Oh my God, what is it? What's the term I used? Social awareness word? Calibration. Thank you, Richie. Damn it. I was like, what? Fuck. I was like, what is that term? Yes. Social calibration. And this is something that's the difficult part about social calibration is that it's something you can't teach. It's not something you can, it's that feeling of when you go into a room and you're having a conversation and there's like a vibe, you kind of feel uncomfortable, or there's, calibration, that was it. Or like, but yeah, there are certain things where it's like, there's a lot of unspoken stuff that people in general can, if they have a lot of social experience, can pick up on. However, for a lot of men who don't have that skill set, who don't have that social calibration, they can only go off of, they're thinking of everything like just like words and actions. And so if you tell a guy, hey, if she says no, she might mean yes, a lot of guys who don't have that social awareness are not going to be like, they're going to think it's like, oh, well, she says no, that means yes. And it's like, that's when it gets really scary. And again, in most cases, it's not malicious. It's not like you're purposely taking advantage of them. It's just a lack of communication. It's a lack of awareness, a lack of calibration. Exactly, Ayub. A dead serious no and a flirtatious no are pretty obvious. And that's sort of like what's tricky, because that's when you start getting into like, well, how do you differentiate those two? And it's like, I don't know how to describe it. And that's when you start getting into like weird, well, if she says no, but she means yes, and that's like, no, that's not, no. Or like, oh, if she says she doesn't want to have sex, that probably means she does. And I don't think Alex meant it that way. I think he kind of understands everything I'm talking about. But just sort of stuff like that, I always kind of get a little bit, That's why I don't like to give people that, like, it sort of advice, where I'm like, because you're going to end up sending someone off down a bad, they're going to end up you're going to end up miscommunicating it, because they're very difficult, or like, when's the right time to kiss a girl? And it's like, people are like, well, you just know. It's like, well, that doesn't help me. Like, that's not advice. And that's why That's why you'll never see me make a video like, here's how to know when to kiss a girl, because then you start assigning behavior. It's like, oh, this is what a girl does when she wants you to kiss her, and then a woman will do that when she doesn't want you to kiss her, and you'll go in for the kiss, and she'll be like, what the fuck? Freeman, yeah, and that's unless I'm really feeling the vibes and I'm getting obvious flirtation. And again, it's really hard for someone who has very, very low social calibration to recognize that. I mean, how many times have you heard dudes like, oh yeah, this chick was like coming on to me hard and I didn't even realize it. It's like, yeah, that's unfortunate. Like when you're first starting out and you don't have a lot of social experience, that just happens, unfortunately. But then you try to go too far in the other direction of like, well, I'm just going to like sarge through everything. And it's like, no. Yeah, so I liked Alex, but after that whole conversation with Vosh, I was like, yeah. So I don't know. Maybe he does believe in certain stuff that Tate says, but he doesn't like admit it. I don't know. Fucking Tate. Is he still around? I still see more like clips of him on YouTube. I think that people are trying to like give him a resurgence after he got banned. Exactly, you. Especially when it comes to certain things like social interaction, like hey, how to like attract a woman, because every woman's individual. It's like, oh, hey, this worked for me 10 times. Doesn't mean it's gonna work for you for the 11th time. Would you agree that as you get older, you know what's obvious and what's not? I don't necessarily think it's a matter of age. I think it's just a matter of social experience. I think it's just a matter of being in social in situations and coming in contact with situations where people might act a certain way. Like, I'm sure, like, people... Bruno Goetz, yeah, stay away from that chick. Oh, my God. He went on a date with a Latina chick, and she told him he thought he was gay for not trying to kiss her within the first 30 minutes. Yeah, never talk to that chick again. I know, Jan. That's the thing. It's like, well, you can't ask a girl to kiss her because then that's kill the vibe. I don't care. If that means I don't ever kiss a girl again, fine. But like this bullshit of like, well, I don't want you to ask. I don't care. I'm going to. And again, personally, in my experience, I've actually done that. It's only ever not worked out once. Where if I say it's like, hey, if I say like I want to kiss you or can I kiss you, that's only ever not worked out once. And that chick ended up being a nightmare. And I was like, crap, I probably shouldn't have kept dating that chick. I agree, Andrew. This is general thoughts on Tate. I find it frustrating how much he is admired. And the whole I agree with some things but not others, I feel is stupid too. So here's like a good like comparison. Let's say I'm a fitness influencer, and I'm like, hey guys, I have a new video. It's like here's a great way to start the day, and it's like you get up, you get 8 hours of sleep, you sleep in total darkness, you have a big breakfast, and you rail a line of Coke. That's a great way to start the morning. Good sleep, dark room, big breakfast, and rail a line of Coke. So obviously most people would be like, well, that's kind of weird. Like that last part wasn't good about railing a line of Coke. That's not good advice. You shouldn't do that. That's really bad. And then someone else is like, well, I don't agree with everything he said, but like, the other stuff, sleeping 8 hours and eating a big breakfast, like that's good. And it's like, yeah, but like wait, hang on. No, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about him saying that it's okay to rail lines of Coke in the morning to start your day. That's the bad thing. That's what we're critiquing. So I hate whenever that's what's so annoying with Tate. It's like, well, I agree with some things and not with others. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about the stuff that you don't agree with, and we'll critique him on that. It always gets sort of like, well, he says some good things. So what? I don't care. It's like, well, he tells me to sleep 8 hours a night. I don't give a fuck. There are plenty of people who will tell you that without telling you to do rails of Coke. Damn. And that's what's so frustrating about. That's like the whole manosphere. It's like, well, there's a lot of good advice here. It's It's like, yeah, sure, but like they don't have to give the bad advice. Stop it. Like this entire movement would be awesome if you just cut out all the bullshit. Like all like the animosity towards women, the resentment towards women. All that crap is what makes this a bad space. If you cut all that shit out and just gave dudes good, wholesome advice. Thoughts on Hustlers University? I've watched some videos on it. I mean, I haven't signed up for it myself. I've watched some videos on it. It's, from what I understand, you pay $50 a month to get access to a Discord, which is like a list of a bunch of side hustles. It's like, okay, like I know Destiny had a couple talks with Sneeko, and he was talking about how a lot of this stuff is like side hustles aren't really that bad. Like, you know, some of them can be fine. You can make some extra cash, but they're not going to get you they're not going to turn you into like multimillionaires. And it's sort of incongruent with Tate and Sneeko and stuff, where they sort of somewhat imply, or they kind of give this vibe of like, hey, you can have what I have too. But it's like, But Tate doesn't think he's hateful towards women. He's just taking care of them. Exactly. It's like, okay, but if you say if your view of women is like, I have to take care of them because they can't take care of themselves, you were saying that women are on a lower intellectual they are on a lower intellectual threshold than you as a man. Women aren't capable of taking care of them. Oh, that was another thing that Alex kept saying during his talk with Vosh, and I was upset because Vosh didn't push back on it. Alex kept saying, like, Tate just thinks that women need to be protected sometimes from themselves. What does that mean? When you say women need to be protected from themselves, what does that mean? Like, women need to be protected from themselves. That there is some sort of implication there that women are inherently like destructive to themselves. I don't know. And but what's stupid about that entire view is that it equally applies to men. There are plenty of men who I'm sure would, like, their impulses drive them to do stuff that would not be good. So they probably need someone in their life to tell them, like, hey, bro, like, chill. You don't want to do that. I think to some extent, especially like when we're children, we do need people to protect us from ourselves, because we don't have enough experience to know that, like, hey, doing this may not be a good thing. But when you just focus it on a man has to do it for a woman, it's like, what are you trying to say? Yeah, paternalism, a way to justify bigotry. Exactly. Exactly, you've been Andrew. And Alex even sort of like bit this bullet. It's like, yeah, he was comparing women to dogs and children, but he doesn't hate them. And it's like, Vosh was just like, what the fuck? Like, bro. And it got into like the whole, it's like, well, what do you mean hate? And it's like, oh, shut the fuck up. It just becomes a semantic battle at that point, and then it just doesn't go anywhere. Like, it was funny because we even had this conversation with the guest. It's like, a person can, doesn't hate black people, but if they think that black people are intellectually inferior, we'd probably still call that person a racist. But, they don't hate them, though. It's like, well, yeah, Richie, it's called affiliate. I think it's called affiliate marketing, where it was like, you make money by posting a bunch of his clips everywhere, all over the entire internet, on TikTok and YouTube, and you make not fake accounts, you make accounts to do it, and you get a cut of the profits. Yeah, it's affiliate. I think it's called affiliate marketing. Yeah, that's Ayub, you mentioned Jordan Peterson, and then Michael followed up with it. The problem with Peterson's whole movement is that you can't ignore the politics and what else he says. I think that's the problem. With Peterson, all of Peterson's like self-help stuff is fine. Like all his like 12 rules for life, there's some stuff in there that I think is kind of bullshit. I think he kind of leans too much on like the, traditionalism and like, traditional gender roles and weird like boomer shit. But like for the most part, it's like general self-help advice. But then when he starts talking about like enforced monogamy, or like, have you guys seen like Peterson's like comments on like the Russia Ukraine shit? It's fucking weird, bro. He's like, like, what do you like? Maybe just like, you know, turn it off. And he's talked like a lot of other stuff he talks about, like, just he just doesn't seem to have a grasp on these, but he talks like he does. And then actual experts come in and they're like, yeah, no, you're not making any sense. But then people defend him. I don't know. But then, yeah, so the defense is like, well, yeah, Peterson has said a lot of stupid shit, but what about all this not stupid shit he said? And it's like, okay, that's fine. If you tell someone to clean their room, that's fine. I don't have any, that's fine. That's cool. But if you're saying that, but then also saying that like Elliot Page is like recruiting trans kids by showing them his abs on Twitter, it's like, I think that latter will overshadow the former, because there are plenty of people out there who will tell you to clean your room and not tell you that Elliot Page is trying to recruit children to be trans by showing his abs on Twitter. And that's and so, but then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, if you really are a fan of Peterson, how do I know that it isn't because of that other half of the equation? How do I know it really is about all this stuff that is generally harmless and not the harmful stuff? And that's when it kind of gets weird. Yeah, Bruno, that the Kyle Kalinske interview was weird. Kyle was being like very good faith. Like that was like the most. I mean, I guess Kyle for generally isn't like super like, you know, aggressive or confrontational. But yeah, Kyle was like seemed really like, hey man, it's having a conversation, and Peterson was like he was like he was like riled up. He was like ready for a fight, and it was weird. That whole thing was, and my favorite line from that, it was so fucking stupid. Peterson was like, Kylo was like something about, it's like, well, you know, what do you think of the LGBTQ community? And then Peterson's like, well, they're not a community. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like he was playing the semantic game of like, well, they don't all agree. But then like right after that, he like cited the trans community. Like it was, I don't know, he was stupid. And that newest clip of him, did you guys see that newest clip of Peterson where he's like, someone's like, do you believe in God? And he's like, well, what do you mean do? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? It's like, what the like, even some of his followers were like, what the fuck? Yeah, that's the other thing with Peterson, is I think he's like constantly like caught between this, like, is he like this like tough warrior who will like go to bat for his ideas, or is he like this harmless person who's being persecuted and just wants to have a civil conversation? It's like you kind of have to pick a lane in a sense. Ugh. But yeah, yeah, Alex is okay. After the Vosh interview, I was kind of like, I don't really watch his stuff anymore. But there's also another version of the Clean Your Room. It's a speech on YouTube by Navy SEALs called Make Your Bed. Exact same idea as Peterson is saying, no vitriolic badging on the side. Yeah, that's what I mean. It gets to the point where it's like, well, I like this guy, but I don't like it when he talks about this. And it's like, okay, well, why don't you gravitate towards people who say the former but not the latter? And people are like, well, I don't want to. And it's like, okay, well, at some point I have to wonder if it's actually the latter stuff that you actually like, but you're defending it by addressing the former. Like, it's weird. Like, it gets to the point where it's like, that happened with like Shapiro or like Crowder or like other like hardcore like right-wing pundits, where it's like, I understand that there have been some cases where they have said probably good shit, or they've said like not super egregious shit, but at some point, at what point do they have to, what could they possibly say that would make, here's a good question I have for a lot of these like Peterson stands. It's like, what would Peterson have to do to make you fully disavow him? What would he have to do to then make you say, you know what, I don't fuck with Jordan Peterson anymore? I don't agree with him. He's stupid. He's in, like, yeah, he says some good stuff, but like he said so much dumb shit that I don't want to deal with him anymore. I would love to like hear that answer. What would they have to do? And the scary thing is, I think it was Trump who said this. I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and people would still love me. And I think to some extent that is true. I think that it does get to a point where like people become there's such a strong parasocial relationship where they will defend this person to the death no matter what they do. I do feel it is hard to find positive role models for men that don't have problematic ideas as well. You're pretty cool though. Thank you. But yeah, I'm not really. That's a good point. I'm not really a masculinity guru. My channel is not really focused around that. And even if it was, I think if I did start like a masculinity channel, I do feel like eventually, because of like the content farming, like in order to try to like boost the algorithm, you inevitably like that's kind of thing. That's sort of like what I think happened to like Alex's channel, where it's like I think he does give good advice, but I do think it gets to the point where it's like when you have to think up constant content on YouTube, eventually you're going to start saying some goofy shit just because you need to like fill the space of the content. And eventually that's going to lead to you saying some like weird shit. Yeah, that's the issue too, Bruno. That's a good point. You have to. That's what's sort of weird when it comes to like I've seen like I used to work at Barnes and Noble and we used to have cookbooks, but the cookbook wasn't about the actual like recipes. It was about like there was an ideology, or like it was always about like there was one. I think there was like one cookbook I saw. It was a chick and she was like, it was like a cookbook, but it was also like trad wife porn. It was like trying to like tell women to like, hey, get back in the kitchen, bitches. Like, this is the natural way. And I'm like, why can't you just give me a fucking cookbook of fucking good recipes? Why do you have to pack it full of this crap? Thoughts on ABBA and Preach? I like Preach. ABBA's okay. I like them both. I do think they sometimes have like it's hard because on one hand I do think that they're very good at communicating certain ideas, like leveling with the audience. But there are some times when I'm like, some of their views are kind of not really red pilly, but like sort of like, they're. I think they did do a couple of videos on like trans issues, and they were kind of, but they weren't like really all that fleshed out. But then again, whenever I do watch them, I feel like that's what's kind of confusing about it is like whenever I watch their stuff, even if they do say some shit that like I think is a bit like underdeveloped or sort of like off base or off kilter, they still are able to it doesn't generate this like very vitriolic response from the audience. A lot of the audience is still like, it's not too bad. But then there are other channels where it's like, oh, I'm just being level-headed and even keeled, and then like the comments are like vitriolic as fuck. And then you have to ask yourself, it's like, okay, like why do you, if you're so fair and balanced, why is your comment, or if you're just being objective, why are all the comments like fucking full of vitriol and like resentment for women that's for trans people? It's kind of weird, isn't it? Joe Rogan-y. Yeah, Joe Rogan, I don't know. I think Joe Rogan's a good interviewer. I think he's just kind of dopey. He does have some biases that shine through. He has a really strong anti-establishment vibe, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, for example, I don't know if you guys saw that interview. Joe Rogan was talking to a reporter, and they were talking about the rates of myocarditis in people who have gotten the vaccine. And the reporter was COVID vaccine, and the reporter was talking about how rates of myocarditis are actually higher in people who have not got the vaccine. And immediately Joe Rogan got very defensive. He got like, oh, I don't think that's true. And they looked it up, and it turns out the reporter was right. And then immediately Joe Rogan was like, well, we don't really know where we're getting this information from. And it's like, okay, Joe, like that's fine. You should be skeptical of information. You should double check it. That's fine. But let's be honest. If that information, if they had looked it up and it said what he wanted to say, he wouldn't have second guessed it. He would have been like, "Oh yeah, see, look, it's right there. It's evidence." And I think that's where Joe Rogan goes wrong sometimes. He lets his own biases sort of influence the discussion. And it's only on like certain topics. But when it does, it like happens hard. And I don't think he has the self-awareness of it. Like if he's just playing like this, like the dumb guy soundboard where he's just asking questions, he's very good at that. Not saying like he's super dumb, but like, you know, where he's asking questions to try to like bring out the best of his guest, that's fine. I think he's very good at that. But when his own biases like enter the mix, that's when he goes like rogue. Red pill. Is being red pill inherently bad? Not inherently, but unfortunately right now, the vast majority, like if I were to ask you like the top red pill channels that exist on like YouTube right now, I would go like, you know, Fresh and Fit, you know, who's that guy? Donovan Sharp. He was around for a while. When you look at the top Better Bachelor, like those kind of fucking idiots, when you look Sneeko, you know, because like again, red pill in and of itself may not be, like the actual concept of it may not be bad, but when you're talking about how it exists in the culture, I had the same exact argument with feminism. It's like, look, I understand feminism as a concept is good, but if people look out into the world and they look at the sort of quote unquote figureheads of feminism, and they're all like these really like obnoxious vitriolic people, that's going to define the movement. Like who's like the, you know, like when we talk about like, you know, the CEO of like black people or something, when we're talking about a certain community, whether it's red pill feminism, you know, whatever, there are always going to be figureheads. There always are going to be people who we look to, even if the community is very widespread, there are always going to be people that kind of represent it who are like big names in the movement. And depending on who those people are, that is going to set the tone. So I'm sure there are a lot of red pill creators who are not vitriolic, who don't have that same resentment for women. However, when I look on YouTube and I look at all these huge channels, like I think Fresh and Fit is coming up on 1 million, right? Yeah, Fresh and Fit have 976,000 subscribers. When I see them, when I see like Sneeko, when I see Andrew Tate, these are like the big people, the figureheads of the movement, or like the most recognizable faces who have the biggest followings, yada yada yada. So they kind of do set the tone. I think that's completely fair. It's like, yeah, I don't think all red pill people are like this, these figureheads. But if these are the figureheads, I think that does say something about most people in this movement, or a significant majority of people. I don't think like you can't use the excuse, well, Fresh and Fit doesn't represent the whole red pill community. It's like they're like one of the biggest red pill communities, one of the biggest red pill centric channels on YouTube by like a margin of like 5. Like it's like if they're hitting almost 1 million subs, like him and Sneeko and Andrew Tate, like these guys are like all over the fucking place. So yeah, they're going to set the tone for like the red pill community. And there are plenty of other smaller creators who you know, they connect or collab with him. Like they're on each other's podcasts, they interview each other, and they don't really seem to disagree on a lot. You know, there's not a lot of pushback between these figureheads. So what does that say about them? Well, maybe they're just protecting their assets. Maybe, but on the other hand, it's like, well, maybe they actually believe this shit. They just don't want to say it. Who would you categorize as like the lead figurehead of feminism? Well, that's the thing, Michael. Right now, I don't really think there is one. If I were to say like 5 or 6 years ago, I'd probably go with like, you know, Emma Watson was big for a while. Who were the women who were ahead of the Women's March? Who was that fucking psycho bitch? The Muslim chick who was like, she ended up like being revealed as like super anti-Semitic or something. Who were the head of the Women's March? Yeah, it was like what was her name? Linda Sarsour. That bitch was fucking insane. But yeah, it was weird. There was like a lot. She was like the head of the women's march, and she was like really vitriolic. And there were tweets of her that like was like she doesn't. This woman doesn't deserve her like pussy or something. Like really like fucked up shit. But she was like a pretty big a pretty big figurehead. She was someone who was on a lot of news radios talking about the women's march and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, she doesn't represent every feminist, but if she's one of the biggest voices in the sphere, if she's like on TV talking about it, she is to some extent going to be representative of it. Anita Sarkeesian was also another one, which I don't really think that was really her fault. I think that was more the whole fallout from Gamergate and all that shit. It kind of like, it sort of like put her into the limelight. But she was another big name. Yeah, Emma Watson, I thought she was sort of like a big, seen as like a feminist quote unquote leader in a sense. But yeah, for the issue with feminism, and this is actually why I think feminism doesn't really catch on as much nowadays, or even like 5 or 6 years ago, is because it is such a widespread movement that having figureheads is very difficult. Because if you think of like the civil rights movement, there were disagreements. There were people who didn't agree with everything. However, in general, the general aim of the civil rights movement, there was a general direction they were going in, right? So that's why someone like MLK could sort of like, or Malcolm X, these people could be figureheads, because even if people disagreed, there was someone they all sort of generally agreed with, The issue I have with feminism nowadays is because it's such I don't want to say widespread, but it's such a elastic movement. Like there's so many sects of feminism and they're all over the place. Yeah, AOC is a good representative. I don't think she's like that quote unquote good, but I think AOC is someone who kind of became like an accidental figurehead in a way. But nowadays with feminism, it's like, because there are so many different like pockets of feminism, how can you possibly have a single person who is the figurehead of such a widespread movement that have tons of different goals, that have tons of different outlooks, tons of different end goals? Yeah, and the issue is like, because like in general, feminism is more, it's not as like they're not fighting for the right to vote, they're not fighting for the for equality in the workplace, stuff like that. It's more like little things in terms of culture, which I agree with. Yeah, exactly. The feminist goal, okay, what is it? And it's more esoteric. It's more, there's another word I'm looking for. It's more flexible. It's more, there's a word I'm thinking of. But like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not really like dead set. It's more like generally in the cultural milieu when we're talking about feminism. It's just general equality in any sort of situation or any sort of, cultural sphere. But the problem is that like, okay, so when you're talking about like what is the goal of feminism, it's kind of hard to put your finger on it exactly, outside of saying, well, equality. But then again, female equality can look a lot of different ways depending on who you ask. Broad. There's another word I'm looking for. Tangible, maybe? Nebulous. Yeah, I think that's it, Envy. It's like very sort of like, it's in the ether. It's more about smaller pockets in the cultural milieu, as opposed to, hey, we're fighting for this like one very distinct goal. Tactile, yeah. Whereas in like, during the suffragettes, like they were about like, hey, we have a very specific goal we're fighting for. Civil rights movement, we have a very specific goal we're fighting for. In the interim, that was even sort of an issue with Black Lives Matter to some extent. Was like, I understood I understand the gist of it, like what you're trying to promote racial equality, okay, but like what are the actual like you're talking about it more in terms of like the milieu, the cultural milieu, which I agree with. I agree with that sentiment, but it's very difficult to sort of like focus around a figurehead, because it's sort of, the movement is so widespread and covers too many bases that it's hard to look to one person and be like, hey, this is the person we're taking orders from, or this is the person who represents the entire movement. So that's why I think having too much of a widespread movement can almost be counterproductive in a way. Whereas with something like the Red Pill, it's such a small movement. It's such like an insulated community where like all the creators or people, if you're in the red pill sphere, you like know most of the other people in the sphere and you're buddies with them and you go to like conventions together and you're on each other's podcasts, which in turn makes an echo chamber. Like I think feminism, one of the issues nowadays, it's like an anti-echo chamber. It's like it's so widespread and so large that it doesn't really, at some point it stops kind of, when you say feminism, what do you mean? Equality, okay, but what does that look like? What is an actual, you need to give me a worldview. And if that worldview is so elastic and so tangible and so nebulous, if you're trying to get someone to like agree with it, how do you tell them? You know, it's, I'm probably explaining this horribly, but hopefully that made somewhat kind of sense. Okay, I have to go cook dinner. I'm putting a roast in the oven. That's what I mean by cooking dinner. But thanks for coming in, guys. Yeah, we kind of stopped, like we've been kind of shooting the shit for a couple hours. But yeah, this is actually fun. I probably will do a couple just like general hangout streams in general, especially because I'm going to be working on the Shield video. So I'm going to be having a lot of like downtime of just, watching the Shield and writing and editing and researching. So I'll probably just hop on stream and just chat with people every now and then. That's kind of why I usually like to get people on to like talk, just so I can have an excuse after to like, hey, let's just chill and chat a little bit about shit. Then we can do that in the future. But maybe I'll just like have like a chill stream like I used to do. Those were always fun. No real like reason to do it. Just why not? Let's just hop on, talk about shit, and lay chill. All right, y'all. Thanks for joining in. I'll talk to you laters.